You ever wonder why we're here? You ever notice that the information that we're being fed doesn't always add up to the truth? Do you ever look out your window at night when the rain's falling down? You ever look down the street and wonder what is going on around you? You ever look out at night and ask yourself, is this all that I am? Where am I? What am I? Is this all there is? Is this real life? As technology continues to bring us closer together, it also tears us further apart. We watch the skies and look at the planet around us and its natural beauty as it continues to march forward on and on and on, unending, unceasing, unwavering. And yet our world, everything that we've built, crumbles around us. We wonder, is this it? Is there more? There's gotta be. We can search, we want to learn, we want to understand, we want to see all that we can see, know all that we can know. We want to look out there, we want to peek behind the veil, we want to ask the questions that nobody will answer. We want to light those fires, the sparks that ignite a curiosity in us. And we ask ourselves, what is out beyond all of that, beyond the edge of reality? Good evening, everybody. How y'all doing? It's Kaiser, and it is Wednesday. Y'all know what that means. It's time for another Edge of Reality. And yes, it is a good day. It's been an interesting, last week or two, but yeah, I'm glad to be back with y'all. Glad to be back here in the studio and doing this show. I love doing Edge of Reality. It is always a fun one. And I've got a bit of an odd story. So this one was actually handed to me only a few days ago, believe it or not, by none other than one of our own viewers out there in the chat. Jungmin Shelley sent me a story that really piqued my interest. And as always, folks, whenever it comes down to what shows I do and whatnot, I mean, I do love to have a lot of audience interaction. So what I usually like to do, and I'm just kind of doing some behind the scenes stuff while I'm talking, is that I love to get feedback on stories that you all want to hear. So Jungmin Shelley was kind enough to send me this story only a few days ago, and I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to have a better opportunity than this to go ahead and actually cover this one. So that's what we're doing tonight. So if you ever want to, please definitely go to that pinned comment up there in the corner of the chat box there and go to my link tree. You can actually go and become part of my Discord server. And in the Discord server, there is actually a chat called The Unexplained. You can drop future stories you would like to see. And also, we can discuss stuff, and I can give you my honest feedback. And you don't have to wait till Wednesday all the time to do it. So that is a really cool thing that I love to do. I love to have everybody just involved, because this is a fun show. It's a mystery, but it's the interesting, fun part of the mystery that I love to get into. I mean, it's the unknown. So without further ado, I know folks are still filing in, and I know it is a bit of a busy streaming night, so hopefully we'll get, folks dropping in whenever and wherever. So, but yeah, just going ahead and checking around there. So, I just noticed Genitals says your Discord link never works for this boomer. I literally just updated my Discord link. Like, I literally just updated it. So I don't know if there's something going wrong with that on because I don't have a permanent link my Discord server. I have to update it like right before the show, and I did update it just now. I just remembered that. I'm also going to go ahead and drop it in the chat. So I know that one works, so I'm sorry. Okay, but anyway, thank you, Genitals, for letting me know that you're there. And JKD Buck 76, about 350. Good to see you there. And Bobby Baloney, clearly Scott's got bored one day and drowned an elephant. Don't know why this is such a big mystery. There's a lot of questions regarding this one, that's for sure. And Cool Gamer, hello everybody. What's going on, Cool Gamer? Good to see you. And Iris, good to see you there. Cool intro. Awesome. I appreciate it. And Talking Trash and Truths. Kaiser, what's going on there, T3? Good to see you. Good to see you. Digger. Always happy to have our good friend Digger over there joining in. Say, we always have such a fun crew here every night. So, yeah. And tonight is also, I definitely want to try and really kind of dig into this one. I don't know how long this stream is going to go, because there is not as much on this topic as I really was hoping for. So not going to be able to stretch this one out for super long, but I'm going to try and keep it fun and adequate length, wink. So, yeah, one of the other things there is that I just checked this morning, and I am 150, I think about 150 hours from, finally hitting my 3,000 watch hour goal. So, this is big. So definitely whatever y'all can do, say, tune in, watch, like set one of my old live streams to play overnight or something like that. Y'all, I can't do it without you. And Bobby Baloney says, as long as people are talking about pineapples like earlier. Yeah, I was in the chat over there with Excited Utterance and Salvador Dali and all them, like watching. They were covering a trial, and they kept bringing up like pineapple something. I can't remember what it was. Like it was just so wild. Yeah, it was just so funny, like, to listen to him, like, they kept seeing Pineapple Witness or something like that over and over. It was just hilarious. And Digger says, Kaiser, did you know I live next to Okanagan Lake? We have our own Nessie. We call him Ogopogo. He has a Wikipedia page. Ooh, I didn't know you were near where the Ogopogo supposedly is. Fantastic. That could be fun. Interesting. Bobby also says, I'm finally getting my server finished so I can earn my first watch hour. There you go. And Murph's Turf. What's going on, Murph? Been a while. It's good to see you. Oh, I apologize. Okanagan. Gotcha. Jungmin Shelley. Good to see you. And guess what, Jungmin? It's actually your story that inspired tonight's episode of Edge of Reality. So, congratulations. Let's see. Wait a minute. Do I remember Ogopogo or from something hilarious? I've seen Ogopogo with my cousin when I was little. Wow, that's cool. That's interesting. Oh, man. I've not ever... I might have to ask you about that one. That would be really cool. All right. And let's get it. There we are. All right, folks. Since as everybody has been filing in, as I just wanted to go ahead and give a shout out and say hi to everybody. And yeah, so this is going to be fun. Murph Turf says, yes, I'm recovering from Hurricane Idalia, Florida. Oh, yeah. I'll say cheers to all the viewers down there in the Florida area, whether you're on the replay crew or you're watching this live. Cheers to y'all, because I know y'all are probably used to hurricanes pretty much, but good to always have everybody safe and sound. All right. There we go. So, anywho, without further ado, I suppose. So, we're talking tonight about a very famous case. One that I really couldn't think of a way to ever really do a show on this one that didn't feel like I was probably just reaching for something kind of off the cuff or random or something like that. I really wanted to actually do. I mean, I do enjoy having sometimes with this show having it be somewhat topical. So kind of like whenever we had all the stuff going on with the LA, or sorry, not LA, the Las Vegas UFO incident, and then the congressional hearing and all of that stuff. I was really glad to have all that happening at the time where it was actually somewhat topical. And I really never thought that the Loch Ness Monster, of all things, and I apologize to my UK viewers, the Loch Ness Monster, I never thought that I would have an opportunity to really dig into this one or talk about it, because it just kind of seemed like one of those where it's like, yeah, everybody's kind of knows about it. Everybody's kind of heard it. But, it is what it is. And yeah, so surprisingly, what ended up happening was that a couple of days ago, I was just perusing, and on the Discord server, Jungman Shelley dropped this story from CBS Evening News about the Loch Ness Monster. And old Nessie showed up in the news. And you know what? Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's actually see what was going on here. This came courtesy again of the CBS Morning News. So, we're going to go ahead and just delve in, watch it, and see what they have to say on the topic. There we go. Let me grab something there. Oh, what's going on, Dave? Good to see you. We are talking about the Loch Ness Monster because it's recently been in the news, actually, as of only a couple of days ago, strangely enough. So let's go ahead and roll the clip.
The mystery over the Loch Ness Monster has fueled imagination and speculation for centuries. Over the weekend, explorers and enthusiasts from around the world descended on the Scottish Highlands to join the largest ever hunts for evidence of its existence. Ian Lee joined the crowd hoping to get to the bottom of this murky mystery.
Learning the lore of Loch Ness takes a local.
If you look down to the end of the valley,
especially if you're looking for a legend.
What do you think that is?
That could be your monster sighting for the weekend.
Scott Kelly grew up with the tales of a monster lurking in these waters.
The foresters and the farmers and the local folk around the Loch will see unusual things in the water, but they'll keep quiet about it.
We have an opportunity here.
American Ken Gerhardt made discovering monsters his life's mission.
Here's the thing that excites me. It's not impossible.
That's what brought you here today.
Yes, absolutely.
This search is the largest in 50 years,
That
with
hat that he's
high-tech
got, I swear.
infrared cameras and drones trying to solve a millennia-old mystery. The myth goes back to the 6th century. An Irish monk allegedly spotted a large beast. But the legend really took off in 1933 with a whale-like creature spotted swimming around.
Based on the evidence that's been collected here over many decades, I think you could make a very strong argument that the creature does exist.
But getting that evidence means getting on a boat, searching for anything on the surface and in the dark depths below with an underwater microphone.
We heard really four
That is a
distinctive,
very small
really
hydrophone.
described as bloops, but that doesn't mean, because I don't understand it, doesn't mean it's not the Loch Ness Monster.
It's not Nessie. It could be Nessie.
Well be, we don't know.
But those bloops create more questions than answers.
Unfortunately, today we didn't see Nessie out here on the water, but we did see a lot of rain and beautiful landscape.
The downpour shrouded the loch in mystery. Mother Nature likes to keep her secrets. For CBS Mornings, Ian Lee, Loch Ness, Scotland.
I mean, Ian, I'm sorry, but it's not a secret if nothing exists, okay?
I believe.
Somebody sees something, though, Tony. I don't know what. And my question is, if you do find whatever this is, what are you going to do with it?
I don't know. I
Take a
appreciate
picture? What are you gonna do?
the guy after the machine hearing the bloops.
Yes.
Not knowing what the bloops are.
Loch Ness, Bigfoot, I believe in all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything more you want to say about that?
I want to go search for Bigfoot.
Really?
Yeah. Let's get on it, CBS.
Nate's going to get out there and find it.
Oops.
We've
Wrong button. Okay. So that is the current situation as it is with the Loch Ness Monster and the search for it that actually began only a couple of days ago. So 2 days ago, that was on August 28th, was whenever this story aired. And so presumably, I believe it was probably on the 27th that they actually filmed the, them going out there and going out on the loch and checking it out. I got to be honest. The fact that they were able to get like drones, multiple boats, and enough eyewitnesses to kind of keep an eye out on the shoreline, that's pretty cool. There's a lot to unpack with this story, but it is interesting. So let's see here. Digger says, thank goodness for you guys, or I've been bored all day. Well, we'll fix that right quick. Bobby says, I shouldn't be able to understand. I take it you mean the guy who... Listen, I take it you mean the Scottish man. You shouldn't be able to understand him. Yeah, it's a terrible Scottish accent. I don't care. Love all my Scottish viewers. And Gigi, what's going up, Gigi? When Shelly says, guys, I'm really feeling myself over your shout out. Hey, like I said, even when we did MH370, I actually had a couple of people, including Shizzy, and Rose, throwing me links to stuff, even behind the scenes while the show was going on, and it turned out to be a great time. I loved it. It was a fantastic show, and I love my audience. I want to be involved. So yeah. And Digger says, I also live in Bigfoot territory. Haven't seen or heard from them though. Well, I guess that's good. Yeah, one of these days we're going to cover and talk about Bigfoot, but I got to find the right time and whatnot for that one. Sounds like the most intense search for her since tech got good. You never know. I mean, yeah, it's the biggest search, the biggest organized hunt for this creature in 50 years, which is pretty wild to think about. And you say, yeah. Yeah, community strong. There we go. So, one thing I did want to make note of, they said something that was interesting, was that they've heard bloops before. And now there's kind of a famous case of it was the underwater SOSUS network, which is in the Atlantic Ocean. And oh wait, no, that's not Atlantic. I think it was actually the Pacific Ocean. My apologies. Where apparently the SOSUS network of underwater hydrophones picked up these noises, and it literally just sounds like bloop. Kind of wild sounding, but it's like, all right, what is that? Turns out there was a lot more going on. Like, people thought it could have been some kind of anything from some creature to a underwater explosion, a giant whale. There was so many things that went around that nobody knew what this thing was. Turned out after a while that they found out that it was caused by an underwater seaquake. Deep down at the very bottom of the ocean, there was some tectonic shift going on, and a couple of plates jammed together and caused this little bloop noise. So, yeah, when they say that they've heard some bloops, I'm a little credulous, to say the least. Or incredulous, I should say. So, anyway. And let's see. Not sure what I believe in more. Monsters in our lakes, oceans, woods, etc., or aliens. Both are equally as plausible in my opinion. Yeah, that is kind of a thing. Because I think that there is room in the modern science for cryptids, because there's in huge parts of the entire earth that we still have like not actually like mapped. There are huge areas that we could still find things that we're still discovering new species of plants and animals literally every day. They just don't always get mainstream press. So, always a thing. MLS says the problem is they are looking for something that might not exist, so they can look for 100 years and find it, or they will always continue to look. Well, yeah, and that's actually very, very poignant there, because in this case, especially in the case of Loch Ness, like there was the first sighting, which we'll get into, like is actually a sighting from a monk who saw this thing in the water way back in basically in the medieval times, and wrote about it. That's like the first actual Loch Ness monster sighting. So this has been going on for hundreds, if not close to 1,000 years at least. That people have heard about the mystery of the Loch Ness monster. It really didn't get popularized until 1933, though. We'll get into that. All right. Mexican Vader says also, F the ocean. Say Bobby says, at least it motivates us to bother to look. Yes, I agree with that. And then Bobby also says, I'm not ready for space aliens. The ocean scares me, the ever-living crap out of me. I get it. There's some terrifying things down there in the ocean, some of which we're going to look at later. Yep. Anyway, so... All right. So one day ago, yesterday, basically, Talk TV, they had a 10-minute spot with some folks that actually were on the Loch Ness search, kind of going over some of their findings and talking about what they claim to have seen. So this actually I didn't find until just as I was doing finally pulling everything up for the show. So I haven't seen this one yet, so I don't know what is on it, and we're going to watch it together. I'm going to make a couple little adjustments there. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and add that straight to the screen. Hello. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and make myself a little bit smaller. That's better. So you can still see me, and then you got the show there. A little cut off at the bottom, though. Okay, fine. I'm being finicky. I know. I'll stop. People are like, gee, I wonder what aliens look like. What the F? Have they not seen what's in friggin' water? All I have to say about that is look at an anglerfish and then ask yourself if you really want to encounter life in the universe. Like Cthulhu could actually be down there. And Jorgundur. Now, there are many species we thought were extinct and have been spotted in remote areas. Yes, that is correct, Gigi. And yeah, I've got video of that. We can go over some that have been discovered, these living fossils, later. All right, here we go. Let's roll it.
Now, it's time to talk about one of my favourite subjects, which you might not know is one of my favourite subjects because I don't talk about it very often. Jeremy Kyle made fun of me once because he expected me to say no. He said, do you believe in the Loch Ness Monster? And I went, yeah, of course I do. Because, you know, I'm Scottish. I like the idea that there's a monster up there somewhere and lurking in the murky depths of the Loch Ness. And sure enough, this weekend, there was a massive hunt for Nessie. Hundreds of people came from all over the world, including from places like Canada, America, and they all searched for it. And, of course, they didn't find anything. One of the people who was there with them was Charlotte Ivers from the Sunday Times. Charlotte, very good afternoon and welcome back.
Thank you for
Yeah. Spoiler alert. They didn't find anything, but, you know, it's at least interesting.
I've just seen your tweet saying that it was 4 years ago that you started here and doing politics for us, and it doesn't seem that long, I must say. I was quite shocked that it was 4 years.
I know, well, what a journey I've been on since. I used to sit here and very seriously analyse Prime Minister's questions,
well,
and now
listen,
I'm here to tell you about my hunt for a mysterious
all
Loch
it proves
monster.
is that you're a completely versatile journalist and you can basically do anything. So the Sunday Times sent you up to Loch Ness to sort of take part. What was the point of, or when did they all decide that this would be the weekend to do it?
Well, this was a deliberately organised search. It's the biggest search in 50 years, and they have new technology they're using. So they had a underwater microphone 60 feet down to pick up any new sounds.
Right.
Then they also had thermal imaging drones, using both of those at the same time for the first time. And then, as you say as well, a bunch of volunteers just sitting and watching.
And the first day you were there was horrible weather, which is quite often the case, wasn't it? It was absolutely blowing a gale and very, very wet.
It was on both days, actually. It was quite weird. The first 3 or so hours I was there, it was glorious sunshine. I got a bit worried that I'd packed wrong. And then the minute I put my coat away in my hotel room, the heavens opened and I never saw the sun again.
You can never pack right for Scotland. I think you never quite know what's going on. Did you have a midgie problem at all? Was there midgies?
No, I think the rain had scared the midges off.
Scared them all away. So we're going to talk in a minute to somebody that you spoke to.
Shelley says, he's Scottish, but that's an English accent, no? I'm no expert. I think we need somebody from the region that could give us a solid answer on that one. Bobby says his voice or her voice is deeper than his. He ain't lying.
Who's a guy called Mark Thewlis, who's from Nessie Land, which is one of the places up there. Because it's quite a small town, isn't it, Loch Ness? I mean, you've got the loch itself is really long, and when you drive along it, you're driving along it for what seems like a good sort of 20 minutes, half an hour almost, or at least I was. And it's very black, isn't it, the water?
It really is. It is a remarkable part of the world. It's incredibly beautiful, incredibly almost austere, and it is the type of place where you think, if I came across a monster here, I wouldn't be wildly shocked. So I can completely see where all of this mythology has come from.
And presumably all the people you were with were very much convinced that there is one.
Some of them were. A lot of them were basically, oh, there I am on my boat. That was very much the photo the picture editor was demanding that we get yourself on a boat now, I was told. But no, I would say there was a bit of a mix. Everyone was fascinated by the loch in some way. They had this sense that there was something in there, but it could be seismic activity, it could be a massive sturgeon, it could be any number of things. But it was just really wonderful, actually, because everyone had this passion for it. Everyone was giving up their time for no benefit, really, apart from just to
and the
enjoy
piece you
themselves.
wrote kind of captured that love that people have for mystery. That you know, there's something weird about the thought that there might be a monster, and people really quite like that. And maybe in this day and age of kind of throw away everything, it's something that people can sort of get into.
I think that's true, and it can often feel, can't it, like there are no mysteries left. We all kind of live in this world where we feel like science has explained everything, but actually that's not true, particularly under the water, the depths of the ocean. There are definitely sea monsters.
Well, there are. Well, I always make the argument. Let's cross now to Mark Thewlis, who's at Nessie Land for us. I think we're able to see him in a moment. Now, his story itself is quite interesting, isn't it? Mark, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mike. Thanks for having me.
No, not at all. Listen, this is, for me,
Okay, just gonna go ahead and say it that the sort of swoopy emo hair and that particular beard with that face does not exactly it's not doing it for this guy. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but I'm just gonna call it there. And kind of looks like one of those Woolly Willy things, like the little toy with the magnetic, like the iron dust. Never mind the hair. Okay, never mind. Sorry, brain fart.
I get ridiculed quite a lot because under normal circumstances people think of me as a sort of relatively semi-serious journalist anyway, but I believe in the Loch Ness Monster. I, for example, will say to people, well, there is an underground, I think there's an underground channel, is there not, that goes from Loch Ness into the sea. Now, if that's the case...
there's said to be an underground cavern.
There's no reason, presumably, why there couldn't be a sea serpent of some description that comes in whenever it wants to come into the loch, hangs about, pops up every now and again, then goes back out to the sea. Right?
Exactly right. I mean, there's numerous possibilities.
Right.
I mean, with all the modern equipment that we've got today, we've barely scratched the surface of the loch.
Yes.
Still.
I mean, slight problem with what happened this weekend, and I've got Charlotte here, who I think you spoke to.
Yes, I did.
Up there. Was that they did make some, they heard some sounds.
Thank God I'm not the only one.
For whatever reason, they didn't record them.
Yeah, somebody forgot to hit the record button.
So you get a job here. There's plenty of people like that here.
They did pick up some sounds. Yeah, that's true.
And did you hear those sounds?
I wasn't on the search personally.
Right.
I was busy in Nessie land, just talking to people that were on it.
Yes.
But yeah, there were all sorts of people allocated all around the loch, all volunteers and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, the feedback I've heard, is that they did pick up something. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jungman Shelley, I'm sorry. I don't know. I think this is probably like some sort of like a gift shop or something. I think those are supposed to be Nessie toys or something behind them, but it does create kind of a weird framing device. I'm gonna be honest with you.
And what about yourself? You've been there since you went to play at the Rock Festival, I understand.
No, I first came to Loch Ness in 2008. I was touring with my then band in the UK.
Right.
They all went back to the up here, and I've been coming here periodically since then.
Okay.
I came in 20.
He's a musician. That makes a lot more sense now. Love musicians, but some things are starting to make sense.
2011, 2017, January this year,
right.
And now here I am working here.
So you're going to stay this time?
Yes.
Excellent. What's Nessie Land? Tell us a bit about it. What's in Nessie Land?
Nessie Land is it's a gift shop / exhibition.
Right.
There's an exhibition which dates back 60 years and is virtually covers the whole history and enigma of Nessie, right. in photographs, display boards, information, and a documentary film.
And what have you got behind you there? You've got a couple of...
Yeah, just got a couple of our Nessies that we sell in the shop here.
Right.
Yeah.
Very nice.
That is right. It is a gift shop.
Who claims to have seen the monster?
I've spoken to people that seen
wow.
stuff. Yeah.
Right, what have they seen?
I've spoken to people that seen humps.
Right.
That's just...
Okay, guys, I got to be honest with you. I have not seen this yet, so I'm watching this for the first time along with you. I totally freaking called it. Oh my God. Bobby says everything about this guy tells me that not to take him seriously, but the look on his face says he's very serious. I agree. He's really giving us the chin. I have not seen a chin like that since Robert Zadar. Yes, they said they've seen humps. Oh, Jude Curio, what's going on, Jude? Glad to see you. Yeah, I would totally buy a Nessie too. I'm just saying.
Just surfaced and then just submerged.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, people are still seeing stuff today.
Right.
They're still seeing like weird activity that's going on in that loch. And to be honest with you, what would they have to gain by making this stuff up?
Well, exactly. I mean, this is what I say. I mean, and for those people who discount it altogether, I don't know how they can. I'll just bring Charlotte back into this. I mean,
sure.
She said some of the people that were up there were just kind of curious and maybe not absolutely certain that there was a monster. But I don't think you can discount it altogether, can you?
No, and look, there's an ongoing debate about it in the sense that there are those who say that the science of the lake doesn't necessarily support the type of monster that people are describing, but then there are lots of different things that these sightings could be. It doesn't have to be the sea beast from the mythology of it. What I will say is the fascination with Nessie is a relatively recent phenomenon. It's essentially from the 1930s that you start to get people getting interested, having sightings, and really a lot of it was Fleet Street. It was particularly the Daily Mail wanting something exciting, wanting a big mystery for their readers, and this seemed like a good one. So it isn't necessarily this kind of thing that's been with us throughout history.
Because the famous picture is always the talk of many pubs, isn't it? Is it real? Is it fake? What was it? Was it a couple of tyres and somebody stuck in the water? That dates back to that kind of time, doesn't it?
It does. This is fascinating. So the Daily Mail sent one of their reporters up to try and find the monster. He thought he'd found it. It turned out that he had either hoaxed the Mail or been hoaxed himself. They threw him under a bus and said, he's a clown, we don't want anything to do with him when they found this out. And then he seems to have got his mates to mock up this picture that the Mail then splashed on their front page. He said, haha, we've got you. But then people say, did his mate actually mock it up? Is the mate lying? So there's wheels within wheels on this stuff.
There really are. And Mark, so you're going to hang around, when's your sort of peak season? Does it go all year round?
Yeah, you do get people visiting Loch Ness all year round. Obviously, peak season is now, and around August, and then it sort of starts to quieten down a bit. But no, people do visit the Loch all year round, all over the world.
And they can find your shop relatively easily, I presume, your museum?
Yeah, can't miss it. It's right at the top of the village of Drumnadrocket.
Yeah.
It's on a terrace, so Nessie Land in big letters. Can't miss it.
Beautiful. Are you still in the rock business, or you've given all that up?
No, sort of retired from that years ago. So these days I'm a published author.
Oh, good. Well, very nice to see you. Thank you, Mark. Good to talk to you. Nessie Land, paid a visit if you happen to be up there. Charlotte Ivers, thank you very much indeed.
Okay. That's that. Well, that kind of gives us a little bit more of an overview of what specifically has been, what was, or in this case, was not found over and during the search that happened only a couple of days ago. But also strangely, there was actually something else that was spotted only just again 2 days ago on the 28th, and it got posted to the Daily Record. And I guess we're gonna go ahead and check this one out too. So this one's a little bit harder to kind of figure out. So I mean, this is kind of what most people are reporting when they say that they spotted something out on the water or sees like humps in the water. This is usually kind of what they're talking about. This is kind of the classic Nessie sighting. And strangely enough, this happened only 2 days ago. And according to the actual story down here, been big in that. So a couple believe they filmed Nessie after spotting a mysterious shape before an early morning swim at Loch Ness. Aga Balinska, 42, and Maddie Wiles, 49, canceled a holiday to the Lake District after hearing that the biggest search for the mythical creature in 50 years was taking place this weekend. They braved downpours on Saturday with other international enthusiasts and got up at 6:30 a.m. on Sunday to go for a dip in the Loch. The water was still, and as they got out from having a swim, they saw a squiggly line on the horizon, which then moved to the left and disappeared. And that is what we are allegedly going to watch.
I'm gonna put my bugs on this trailer.
There is no subtitles, FYI.
I'm gonna put my bugs on this trailer.
So that's way, way out there. Yeah, when most folks when most folks report sightings of Nessie, like I said, this is kind of what they usually are talking about, seeing these humps just kind of protruding out of the water and swimming along. Let me go back there.
I'm gonna put my bugs on this trailer.
He put his pants on the trailer. Interesting. So yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing there. It does appear to have some movement. But yeah, not a whole lot to really go off of there. Let's see. And Bobby says they swam in it. Yep. Apparently apparently people love to go swimming in it. It is what it is. Oh man. Let's see there. Okay. That's cool, GG. Other than Yoga Pogo, I don't think I've ever encountered anything not immediately identifiable. That's cool. Yeah, I'm going to have to definitely talk to Gigi about her, what she's talking about there with, that just sounds interesting. I got to find out more because I'm still very skeptical on that particular, subject, but always like to listen to folks that have had encounters or had things they can't explain. Who did it better? Some people do anything to submerge themselves in fishy pee. Oh, goodness. So, yeah, that's what we've got there so far. All right. And so the recent things that we've seen with the Loch Ness monster, it's I mean, there's not a whole lot really to kind of unpack on that end. So I mean, that's just the latest that has come out. So now I guess we really need to ask the question of, how did we get here? Well, that's a very easy one to go ahead and mention too, because I went ahead, I figured if we're going to be doing this, we might as well go ahead and, in addition to getting some footage and interesting stuff from what's going on today, let's also go ahead and might as well just do a deep dive into the past and learn all about this thing and kind of where do we come from and where do we go? Where do you come from, O Cotton Eye Joe? Anyway, so over on Rumble, I do want to say a special hello to Spirit Star 005. They mention that the ocean is scary and mentions goblin sharks. Yeah, goblin sharks are pretty terrifying. Their teeth are just these weird shapes. Ugh. Yeah, well, some of that was intentional. All right. There we go. And as always, folks, I'm going to be showing some clips here. If for some reason I get knocked off the stream, I will still be going over on Rumble. I am simultaneously streaming this to Rumble and YouTube and to X or Twitter, whatever. I still call it Twitter. And yeah, so always feel free to do that. And well, remember, over on Rumble, if you definitely want to get your chat read, say it. I still read my chats, but you can always, there is always the Rumble rant button, and I might just have to break out a little something if that happens. But yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, or burn that bridge when we come to it. Obviously, y'all know I don't require nothing, and I just appreciate what all y'all are here for. I mean, I just appreciate the community. So anyway, let's go ahead and check out this next thing. So this is kind of a video. It's part 1 of 2, and this is the cryptid profile of Loch Ness Monster. Real quick, I'm gonna adjust my audio levels. There we go. Hopefully the audio is good there. I don't want to max it out. Okay. All right. And this is courtesy of Trey the Explainer. He puts this at the beginning of his videos. It's just a YouTube video. So
Hello there, guys, and welcome back to another cryptid profile. Today is a special episode because we'll be tackling one of the most famous cryptids of all time. A cryptid from the English Isles that has been spotted by dozens of individuals throughout history. Yes, you know what I'm talking about. Leprechauns.
To the bottom of this. You're still on there, guy. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, man.
This guy, helping to direct traffic, says he's prepared for his encounter with the leprechaun. He's suited up from head to toe.
This wars off spells right here. This is a special leprechaun flute, which has been passed down from thousands of years ago from my great-great-grandfather who was Irish. I just came to help out.
Okay, we're not actually talking about leprechauns. Today we are examining the one, the only, Loch Ness Monster of Scotland, and take a closer look at its history, eyewitness reports, and evidence. So sit back and play your bagpipes, because this is Cryptid Profile, Loch Ness Monster. Let's begin by giving an overview of what the Loch Ness Monster is. The Loch Ness Monster is undoubtedly the most famous of the lake monsters, and second only to Bigfoot as the most famous cryptid. If you haven't heard of the Loch Ness Monster, well, you should really get out more. The Loch Ness Monster is an alleged, undiscovered aquatic animal said to inhabit the Loch Ness, a large body of water found in the Scottish Highlands. Descriptions of the monsters vary greatly, ranging from an albino furry camel, an aquatic dog-like animal, an amorphous blob, and lastly and most famously a plesiosaur-like reptile with a long neck that sticks out of the water like a swan, a serpentine body, and 4 flippers. Many claim that the first recorded sighting of the monster began in 565 AD, and was made by Saint Columba, who encountered the monster and banished it through magic. All other eyewitness accounts appear to begin after 1933, when a man by the name of George Spicer and his wife saw a large blob-like creature undulate across the road while they were driving in their car. After the eyewitness testimony, which was widely distributed, popularity of the monster rose astoundingly. Dozens of other accounts poured in, as well as photographic, video, and sound evidence to prove the existence of the monster, most famously the surgeon photo. To this day, reports still occur, but albeit at a slower rate. There's a lot to cover, so where to begin? Well, in this video, I'm just going to cover the eyewitness reports throughout the years only, and then in the next video, I'll examine the photographic and video evidence, and likely a third video will discuss the possibility of it being a plesiosaur.
I do want to make a there. So MLS Law says, is it odd that I believe more in magic than the existence of the Loch Ness Monster? You're not alone, buddy. You're not alone. But is it really magic or just technology we don't understand yet? Yeah. Whoops. I messed that up. Anyway.
So we might as well examine each account chronologically, which means let's first examine where many proponents claim the Loch Ness Monster first originated, the St. Columbia account taken in 565 AD. Ah yes, the St. Columbia account. It is often cited by many Loch Ness proponents as the first appearance of the monster and strong evidence that the monster has existed in the loch for thousands of years. St. Columbia was an Irish missionary who lived from 521 AD to 597 AD. He is credited as the founder of Christianity in Scotland. Much of the information on St. Columbia's life, including the alleged Loch Ness account, comes solely from a biography written about him after his death, The Life of Columbia by Adamnan, Columbia's cousin and fellow clergyman. The Life of Columbia records the incident in chapter 28, titled, How an Aquatic Monster Was Driven Off by the Virtue of the Blessed Man's Prayer. The account starts out by saying Columbia was traveling the country until he reaches the river Ness, not the Loch Ness as often claimed. There, he encountered some locals who were burying the body of a man who had been attacked by a water beast in the river. Upon hearing this, Columbia forces one of his followers to swim across the river to work as bait for the monster. What a great and noble hero. When his follower reached the middle of the river, the monster approached him, about to attack. But, to the monster's dismay, from the shoreline, Columbia made the sign of the cross and went exorcist on the monster, shouting, "Go no further, do not touch the man, go back at once." The story goes on to claim that the monster was stopped in its tracks, and as if pulled back by ropes, the monster was dragged underwater by Columbia's magical abilities. And well, that's it. The entire account is incredibly brief, to the point I did some further research to see if there was any more to the story, but nope, this is it. So let's break this down. The thing is, the life of St. Columbia is highly dubious. Let's ignore the fact that the biography was made decades after the actual events, and made with incredible bias as it constantly glorifies the saint, but furthermore, it is filled with tons of absurd miracles Columbia claimed to have performed throughout his lifetime, all of them lacking any evidence they existed at all, making it extremely unreliable. It becomes quickly apparent to the reader that the life of St. Columbia is nothing more than, well, propaganda for the Catholic Church during the Middle Ages. As constantly as people like to say that the St. Columbia story was the first eyewitness account of the Loch Ness Monster, people need to keep in mind that St. Columbia basically encountered mythical and ravenous monsters wherever he went, always using magic to fight them off. At one point in the story, St. Columbia fights a massive whale that possessed sharp teeth which attacks at the boat he was on. In the story, he managed to banish it to the bottom of the sea, just like how he did with the Loch Ness Monster, through magical prayer. Ironically, in the chapter just before the one that discusses Columbia's fight with the Loch Ness Monster, the chapter is called, I kid you not, Columbia Destroys a Giant Boar Through Prayer, and it's exactly what you think it is. The chapter after discusses how Columbia banished all the serpents and reptiles from an island. And several chapters after that is an account of how St. Columbia resurrected a child from the dead like a zombie. Oh, and he also drove a demon into a pail of milk. The list goes on and on. Geez, even Jesus is saying to this guy, dude, tone down the miracles. St. Columbia's stories are nothing more than absurd and unsubstantiated superstition, and we shouldn't really give them any attention whatsoever. The recollection of the monster in the river Ness likely has nothing to do with the Loch Ness Monster, and is almost definitely a work of complete fiction to make St. Columbia seem more impressive and more important, just like all the dozens of other monsters he claimed to have encountered and fought. The river Ness legend's attachment to the Loch Ness Monster legend is unsupported and is just likely Loch Ness Monster believers seeking to substantiate their beliefs where no such evidence exists. Even if we led to believe that the account is truthful, the creature described in Columbia's biography is simply referred to as a water monster. There is no description of the beast other than that. They never defined it as a snake-like or plesiosaur-like monster, and depictions of the monster can be seen during the time which depicted as a cat-like animal with mammalian ears, 4 paws with claws, and covered in fur, far from the modern view of the monster, most resembling a lion above anything else. Well anyways, the St. Columbia account likely has nothing to do with the Loch Ness Monster, and is instead a false account created by Columbia's followers to make him seem more epic and magical than he probably was, which was only likely later associated with the Loch Ness Monster. Now moving on to the more recent accounts.
Yeah, so see, there's already a lot of weirdness going on with this story. Yeah, St. Columbia is definitely an interesting character. That would be fascinating to watch one of these days. Kind of do like a little bit of a see some of the interesting things that this guy claimed. Don't know if that's live stream material, but that would be hilarious. And Squabob, what's going on there? How you doing, Squabob? Nessie might be magic. See, David was onto something. Yeah, maybe. Bobby says, see, soggy mammal.
There is an amazing lack of any sightings of any monster in the area for almost 1,500 years. 0 accounts exist between 565 AD to 1933. Again, further suggesting that there is no link between the two. Alrighty, as far as I've researched, the likely truly oldest account that could be associated with the Loch Ness Monster appears in, as previously mentioned, during the summer of 1933. On the afternoon of July 22nd, 1933, George Spicer and his wife were driving in their car when suddenly a creature crossed the road directly in front of them. As they later described to the local newspaper, the creature was massive, large enough to cover the entire road with its bulk. Originally described as 4 feet tall and 8 feet long, George later claimed to have underestimated its size.
Oops, sorry, I hit him.
Yeah, stay down there, guy. Don't be afraid.
Or tentacle that stretched off was 25 feet long. Later described to the local newspaper, associated with the Loch Ness Monster appears in 33. George Spicer.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to. I was trying to hit the pause button. Squab says we need St. Columbia to straighten out Disney. That would be hilarious. Big on Satan.
And his wife were driving in their car when suddenly a creature crossed the road directly in front of them. As they later described to the local newspaper, the creature was massive, large enough to cover the entire road with its bulk. Originally described as 4 feet tall and 8 feet long, George later claimed to have underestimated its size and instead claimed its true size was 25 feet long. The description of the beast...
This guy...
Keep hitting the... I try to hit the pause button. It's a giant sperm. It's all it is. It's a giant friggin' sperm. Oh, for crying out loud. I'm just going to give up.
Its size and instead claimed its true size was 25 feet long. The description of the beast was extremely bizarre, and George described the entire animal as a huge snail with a long neck. It had grayish skin, which George likened to that of a dirty elephant or rhinoceros. Its body was blob-like, with no visible limbs, tail, or head. Protruding from where a head would have existed was a long appendage or tentacle that stretched off into the shrubbery on the side of the road, which obscured its end. The arm-like organ undulated and twisted, creating waves across its form. The entire animal dragged and flopped across the road. The only other feature of note on the body was an appendage that slumped when the creature moved, which George likened to a tail that curled around the body. But Miss Spicer believed was an additional animal hitching a ride on the back of the creature. They also suggested that the creature had an additional animal in its mouth. George emphatically stated that the creature was the nearest approach to a dragon or prehistoric animal that he has ever seen in his life. Their story was published in the local newspaper that August after George submitted it as a letter. The story gained instant publicity and is commonly accepted as the catalyst that jump-started the Loch Ness Monster craze, which ran rampant during the mid-20th century. Soon after the publishing of the story in August 1933, several other sightings were reported, some of which claimed to have occurred long before the 1933 account. A woman by the name of Miss Reed claimed to have seen an entirely different creature than that of George and his wife in 1932. The animal she reported walked on all fours, was covered entirely in hair, and possessed a short rounded head, a mane, and webbed feet. The animal itself was claimed by Miss Reed to have been 6.5 feet long, and resembled a very large otter. In addition, in 1990, Colonel Lewis McPherson Fordyce reportedly claimed to have seen a completely different monster to that of either report in 1932. This time, the monster he described was a land-going creature that walked on long legs and possessed a long neck. It was covered in white shaggy fur and most resembled a camel or a llama. The animal he described galloped across the countryside.
Bobby? Are you right? Are you reading ahead on this? The wet camels. Yikes. Over there on Rumble, Spirit Star 005 says, wait, so it was an eldritch horror then? Very possibly. Bobby says, these are kind of awesome, not going to lie. Yeah? Not going to... Yeah, very odd. I agree. Very fascinating, at least. I'm going to let this play for a sec. I got to run and grab something real quick. I'll be right back.
And was seen far from the loch's edge. Now, all these early Loch Ness Monster sightings sound nothing like our modern concept of the creature. Well, that's because it wasn't until January 1934 that we got the first appearance of the contemporary Loch Ness Monster. The extremely famous Arthur Grant sighting seemed to set the standard for the Loch Ness Monster, and was the first account that described the Loch Ness Monster as a plesiosaur-like creature. As the story goes, Arthur Grant was riding his motorcycle at 1 a.m. in the morning when suddenly he hit something. Grant described the creature he struck with a long neck and a small head. Being a veterinarian student, Grant likened it to a cross between a plesiosaur and a seal, with webbed digits and an otter-like tail. The creature quickly undulated across the road and fled into the loch, disappearing below the surface. This concept of the Loch Ness Monster quickly rooted itself in the minds of the locals, and after 3 months since Grant's account, the famous surgeon's photo of the monster with a long vertical neck and back protruding from the surface of the loch was taken and received much publicity, so much that the iconic image of the monster as a plesiosaur-like marine reptile became the staple of the Loch Ness accounts, and remained the dominant form described amongst all future sightings. In 1936, some more oddity and untraditional monsters were sighted, one of which was described by a famous landscape painter, Alistair Dallas, whose monster remains one of the strangest, resembling a cross between a seahorse, a camel, and a sturgeon. However, from the late 30s to, well, today, dozens if not hundreds of accounts have followed and continually reported a snake-like or plesiosaur-like creature, like the one described in 1934 by Grant. But who knows how many of these are pareidolia, fraudulent, and misidentifications. So let's just focus on the first few core stories. In these early stories, one can see that there is so much variation between the accounts and between the monsters described in each account, it is highly unlikely that all of them can be true. Because we have to accept that not one undiscovered species exist in and around the loch, but several inhabit the region, ranging from a bizarre terrestrial camel to a weird giant blob to a huge otter to a plesiosaur-like animal. It's either that or the Loch Ness Monster has a split personality or something. Who knows? I believe that if we look at the first stories of the Loch Ness Monster, we can see that the Loch Ness Monster does not appear as a consistent creature that remains constant and certain throughout time, as one would expect if the animal truly existed. But instead, the Loch Ness Monster appears to evolve and develop into our modern view of it over time, as a result of the hype and attention attracted to it by the media. First, it appears as a vague and uncertain amorphous blob lacking any great detail, and then with every sighting develops more and more detail until it arrives at the more conclusive and more concise concept, almost as if it is being fabricated by people's minds over the course of many years. The creature described by George Spicer and his wife is what I like to call the proto-Loch Ness Monster. It has very ambiguous details associated with it, and it wouldn't really fit in accordance to any known animal if we were to try to classify it. The next report was of that of a large otter or seal-like creature, which again remained kind of ambiguous. And then the next report was a plesiosaur-like seal creature, and that one seemed to stick. To me, it appears these early proto-Loch Ness monsters, the predecessors to the true Loch Ness Monster, were attempts to throw ideas and forms of monsters against the wall and see what sticks, or in this case, pop culture, likes the most. The monster didn't start out looking like a plesiosaur, it actually started out as a myriad of things. And over time, the plesiosaur concept dominated over the others. Something you wouldn't expect if the animal actually existed. It seems almost as if that popular opinion decided what the Loch Ness Monster looked like, not its actual appearance. These early Loch Ness Monsters were like tests to see what pop culture would like the most and what newspapers and media and whoever would think were more interesting as far as what the monster looked like. Now, it's important to examine the context in which the stories arose from. The summer of 1933 was a big year. That summer, one of the most revolutionary films ever created was released. I'm, of course, talking about The Invisible Man. Okay, no, I'm of course talking about King Kong. Yes, the King Kong. Today, we might not consider the 1933 King Kong to be a big deal, but back in those times, the effects and lifelike stop-motion animations were considered spectacles. Throughout the film, not only does the giant gorilla make an appearance, I plan on doing an episode on that guy in a little bit, but several famous prehistoric animals throughout history ranging from Brontosaurus to T-Rex to pterosaurs. The film quickly became one of the largest pop culture events of the year, and as Darren Each best put it in his book, Hunting Monsters, people were enthralled by the idea of giant exotic monsters, and the impact of the film was considerable. Cinema goers were viscerally shocked by the reality of the monsters on screen. The impact King Kong made on moviegoers as a whole, as far as their understanding of prehistoric monsters, is comparable to that of Jurassic Park in 1993. The film painted a spectacular and somewhat terrifying concept that massive and frightening prehistoric beasts from millions of years ago were still very much alive in remote parts of the world, and the possibility that they could one day reach civilization and wreak havoc was very much a fear audience members took away from the film. That summer, some audience members possessed what could be only described as a paranoia of the unknown, uncivilized, and primeval parts of the world, and the creatures that might inhabit them. This prehistoric craze almost definitely had an impact on the Loch Ness Monster sightings, as just a few months after the release of the film outside the US, the Loch Ness Monster frenzy occurred, and the first sighting of it occurred like less than a few weeks after it was released outside the US. In fact, the first ones to report an encounter with the monster, the Spicers, admitted to watching the film prior to the encounter. Even their description of the monster seems to be greatly influenced by the film, as a suspiciously similar monster to the one they described was seen in the film. There's a scene in the film where a giant brontosaurus with the same elephantine texture, curved tail around the side of the body, ravenous appetite for carrying victims off the ground with its long neck, and limbs and feet obscured by the water appears to fit the Spicers' description perfectly. It seems highly likely, knowingly or unknowingly, the Spicers were influenced by the various images and themes present in the film. This seems likely the case with other Loch Ness accounts of the monster too, as descriptions of the same long vertical-necked humped creature fits various scenes and images of the creature throughout the film. The surgeon's photo resembles this scene of a long-necked plesiosaur-like animal attacking people in the film exactly. It seems far more likely that these eyewitnesses are seeing animals they normally would have seen and think nothing of it under traditional.
that is an interesting thing to kind of mention. So yeah, the pop culture aspect of this case is very interesting. And yeah, it's odd that suddenly right around this time, you know, the Ray Harryhausen dinosaur movies and whatnot really start taking off. And as somebody who is a big fan of film, I love Ray Harryhausen's work. I mean, the old stop motion dinosaurs, I know by modern standards they don't look all that great, but that at the time that was cutting edge. And it's really interesting.
Circumstances, which they have just unknowingly been influenced by the film and attributed them to prehistoric and unnatural circumstances. Animals such as seals, otters, and deer appear commonly in and around the loch. The Spicers' original sighting occurred right next to a conifer plantation, an ideal feeding ground for deer. It is likely a huddled herd of deer scrambling across the road appeared like an amorphous blob under the right conditions, and influenced by the film, they just attributed to a brontosaurus. Other accounts could have been a combination of various creatures. Arthur Grant likely saw a seal or otter scrambling across the road in the poor conditions appearing like a plesiosaur-like animal. A group of otters and seals from a distance in the water can give the appearance of one singular animal with a coiled and serpentine body, as they swim in lines. Large catfish and eels are also known to inhabit the waters of Loch Ness. I think a lot of the reports from Loch Ness are nothing more than, well, known animals, logs, or frauds. Most of these reports wouldn't bat an eye anywhere else in the world due to their sole basis in anecdotal evidence. Why treat Loch Ness any different? I think there is so much hype and paranoia associated with the Loch Ness Monster that any report, any photograph, any film, any ripple in the water is instantly associated with the monster, and said to be nothing else than the monster, instead of first being looked at logically and rationally as a possibly known explanation. Like I said, people are going so paranoid over the existence of the monster that trivial things are held up as evidence of the beast. I think a stigma arose in and around the loch, a stigma against plausibility and rationality. The fact people go, no, that thing wasn't a deer, it was likely a monster, like that one I saw in the movies the other day. The main problem I have is that just most of these eyewitness reports are solely anecdotal evidence. There's really no evidence to support any of them, really.
That is something to note there. So, yeah, I started mentioning movies and stuff like that. And Jude says, guys, are you doing King Kong next? I think at some point, like as a special effects fan, I will have to talk about some Ray Harryhausen at some point there. Bobby says, Kaiser's movie nerding again. Yeah, I'd have a tendency to do that, is my problem. Ghostery Anonymous, what's going on there, Ghostery? My lifelong 12-year-old sense of humor is going to say it's a massive schlong sticking out of the water. Ah, that's funny. Gigi says, shapeshifters scare me more than Nessie or Bigfoot. Yeah, definitely going to have to talk about some very famous cases. There's actually a really interesting one that happened on a Native American like reservation where an actual sheriff, like law enforcement officer, claims that he was chased in his squad car by what he only can describe as a skinwalker from like ancient lore. And that's pretty wild. Yeah, it's coming down the pipe at one point. JKD says, Hogs and Frogs sounds like a D&D retro clone. Yeah. Nessie equals aspect of Bahamut. Mexican Vader says, Jeff should join you for any Godzilla or talk stream. Yes. Oh, you know, I would love to do a review of like the original like Godzilla movies, and would love to have Jeff. That'd be so much fun. Yeah, I didn't expect the movie guy to talk about movies. I'm shocked. Oh, did I forget to change that? Whoops, I did. There we go. Okay, fixed. Oh, goodness. If Nessie swims up and asks if you've seen John Connor, we're at. That would be awesome. Worth the watch along. And feline domesticus. No, ghostery. Sorry. I don't have the cats in here. I know. Yeah, it's pretty often about it, but I think it would be jumping all over my keyboard. It's just, yeah. Oh man, I'd party it up for a Godzilla stream with Jeff. That would be so much fun. You know, the only way that that could get better is if we have like a limited like space thing where we like get like a couple of us YouTubers together and a handful of like folks. We just do like a watch party, like a live watch party of Godzilla. That'd be great. Look, Bobby, they'd be jumping all over the keyboard in my desk and they would not be able to do anything. So they're not allowed in here.
There's no like fin dragging or, you know, a corpse being found or anything. It's just, oh yeah, I saw that and that's it. The thing is, eyewitness testimony, as said, I've repeated like many times, is like the weakest form of evidence because, as I've said before, people are easily influenced by the stuff that they're around. And obviously, I think the existence of King Kong, which arose just right around this time, kind of supports the idea that these people are being influenced by this movie, and they are attributing normal things and natural, you know, explanations to the supernatural and the prehistoric and the mysteries of the world as an effect of this movie. Most, if not all, eyewitness claims can be attributed to well-known explanations and are likely merely products of the King Kong craze of 1933. As far as I was able to find, no reliable accounts of the monster exist before 1933, the St. Columbia account no doubt being a fabricated folktale that was created entirely independently from the monster and only later associated with it. We're able to see that the monster arose first vaguely, with many wildly different descriptions of it being present until one description became more dominant over the others. The fact that it arose not as a consistent description, but instead developed and changed over time, suggests that the monster arose from popular opinion as an influence of King Kong and not a real organism. As I think I have conclusively proven to the extent available to me, the Loch Ness Monster is nothing more than a product of paranoia and King Kong. Case closed.
Yeah, okay, I muted it. All right. Yeah. Illegal, most adorable kitty guilting comment. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I realized I was muted. I got it. Figured it out. You're not wrong, Bobby. You're not wrong. All right. So, here we go. Part 2. Let's actually get into some of the evidence, and then I've got some other very fascinating sightings, as well as probably some interesting new evidence that might have come forward, as well as kind of going through and debunking some old evidence that may or may not actually be, well, may not be all it's cracked up to be. Okay, Digger, I have my YouTube over here on my other screen, so I can literally just hit the unmute button. Don't try to pull one over on me. It's okay. I got you guys. It's fine. All right. Roll them.
Hello there, guys, and happy holidays to all of you. I hope you enjoyed my new animated intro depicting the first moments of abiogenesis as the first organism formed through natural means in the hellish Martian-like landscape of the prebiotic Earth. I'm not entirely sure how accurate it is, but it was just my humble first attempts at animation. Well, anyways, today, do I have a treat for all you cryptid fans? We are continuing my Loch Ness Monster series with part 2, tackling probably the most intriguing and what is considered by most the most promising area giving support to the existence of the monster, and that is the countless alleged video and photographic evidence collected over the past half a century. If you haven't seen part 1 where I discussed the eyewitnesses themselves, the context in which the Loch Ness Monster appeared, and the monster's evolution from eyewitness to eyewitness, click the link in the description or the button on screen. If not, sit back and enjoy this next installment of Cryptid Profile. The Loch Ness Monster has been the subject of a cryptozoological boom of images and videos over the decades since its first appearance, and is likely only surpassed by Bigfoot as far as the sheer amount of proposed images of the monster go. So let's examine these videos and photos to see if these monsters are actually monsters or not. One of the first and undoubtedly the most famous photos of the Loch Ness Monster is the surgeon's photo, taken in 1934. This image is said to capture the bird-like neck and back of a half-submerged creature off the shore of the loch. Any details besides that are rather difficult to make out. What I think is the most intriguing part of this image is its history, which is quite confusing and somewhat suspect. First off, the very iconic image seen throughout pop culture is not the original. What we often see is merely a cropped reproduction of the original photograph, which originally looked like this, making the subject look much smaller than the cropped version would make you think. In addition, a second photo of the alleged monster, taken a few seconds later, depicts a similar shape with a much more rounded head that appears to be submerging underwater. However, this image gained much less attention due to its apparent blurriness and low quality. The two photos were taken by gynecologist Robert K. Wilson, who was at Loch Ness on vacation. And yes, you heard that right, he's not a surgeon, he's a gynecologist. Man, the lies about this image are piling up. Wilson claims that he saw the black object surrounded by ripples and quickly snapped the pictures before the creature could dive underwater. And the aftermath of 2 photos is what we got. Wilson sold the clearest image to the Daily Mail, and it was published in the paper on April 1934.
Yeah, I know. You hear that one, it's just like, hold on. What? Oh, jeez. That's funny. I don't know why, it's just funny to me.
Gaining great attention, the photo has been for decades presented by Loch Ness proponents as strong evidence of the beast. The big question is, are these 2 photos actually of a monster or not? Well, when we examine the 2 photos themselves, it is clear several things are suspect of this not being a monster. First off, analysis of the location and ripple size allows to indicate that the subject in these photos is puny, roughly 2 to 3 feet tall, far from the massive monster normally described by eyewitnesses. Second, the surrounding ripples indicate that a substantial amount of time has passed. The environment in each pay very little resemblance to one another, so there is really no way of knowing if the 2 images were actually taken at the same place or same time. In addition, the 2 subjects in the photos look very different in shape, and the second one possesses a much more rounded head than the first. So who knows if the 2 are even the same object? It is entirely possible that these 2 images might have been from different subjects at different places and at different times. Another very curious thing of note is the first subject's very distinct anachronistic saurian neck shape, which seems to bear a suspicious resemblance to the image of sauropods and plesiosaurs commonly exhibited in films and books at the time period. Most notably 1993's King Kong, which came out several months prior. It's possible that a crafty hoaxer might have been inspired by the various creatures of a popular film at the time. In general, the subject of these photos doesn't really look like it's, well, even alive. It doesn't really look like an animal at all, it just kind of looks like a tiny, inanimate object. Some skeptics have tried to suggest that the subject is a bird or an otter or something, but I'm pretty certain it's something inanimate. I'm not really sure why this photo is held up as great evidence of the monster when it really doesn't deserve that much attention in my opinion. In the 1990s, 2 stepbrothers claimed to have faked the photos with a toy submarine, as a way to get back at the Daily Mail, who fired their father, a big game hunter, named Marmaduke Wetherell. Marmaduke had been sent to investigate the Loch Ness Monster in 1933 by the Daily Mail, and brought the paper a fraudulent Loch Ness Monster tracks that turned out to be hippo tracks. As a result, he was out of a job and seeking revenge. His son Ian and stepson Christian claimed they used Wilson as a cover-up due to his high status and good credibility. Wilson played along because he just wanted to make a good practical joke. Maybe it was all just a joke gone wrong. Maybe these 2 stepbrothers just want attention and are actually lying about the entire hoax story. Who knows? Whatever the truth is, I think it is pretty safe to say that the surgeon's photo, or should I say the gynecologist's photo, is probably nothing more than an elaborate hoax regardless of if the stepbrothers were actually involved or not. Next, we are moving on to an actually earlier image, probably the first of the alleged monster, and that is Hugh Gray's photo from 1933. The photo itself is quite blurry, but the subject is quite large in the image. We can see a white creature with a long neck that is submerged underwater. Hugh claimed that the proposed monster in this photo was 12 meters long, but we can't really validate this because the photo does not capture any surrounding details to figure out the size of the creature. Hugh seems highly suspect as he claimed to have encountered the monster over 6 times prior. I think modern British biologist Darren Nish puts the identity of the monster in the photo quite clearly in his book. It's a swan, with its neck underwater, tail and leg clearly identifiable. Next up is P.A. McNabb's photo taken in 1955, but wasn't made public until 1957, and it is one of the more beautiful and gothic shots of the monster. The castle in the foreground and the monster just offshore certainly gives an eerie feel to the viewer. The McNabb photo was published in a Loch Ness Monster book titled More Than a Legend. It depicts two large humps directly off the shore of Urquhart Castle. McNabb claimed to have taken the photo offshore as the monster was moving fast. This, however, was undone by Roy Mackle, a Loch Ness Monster investigator, who found there were apparently two photos of the monster from slightly different positions, as indicated by the differing reflections of the castle and a new clump of trees visible in the bottom corner. Now, this wouldn't be an issue except for the fact that the apparently moving object is in the same exact place even after McNabb had enough time to change positions. In addition, the monster is suspiciously darker than any other dark object in the entire photo. Over the years, many considered the McNabb photo to be a hoax and highly suspicious,
First of all, I don't know why he spells white that way, but yeah, Gozri mentions patterns indicate the movie tends to, that movie trends tend to watch weird or match weird phenomena. Yeah, weird example might be the haunting trends of the 1970s, which seems to match 1970s movie effects. Yep, pretty much.
Suggesting that the monster is a boat, a wave, or a straight-up fabrication with the monster being overlaid on top of an original photo without the monster in it. Whatever the answer is, the photo is dubious, and even if it is authentic, doesn't really give great evidence of the monster. Next up is the O'Connor photo taken in May 1960. This one, like the previous, is pretty eerie looking, depicting a large creature half submerged. O'Connor was camping by the loch side, and in the early morning hours he went to relieve himself. He saw the creature and quickly ran for his camera. Apparently he decided to get in the water with the creature to take the picture. Ooh, the resulting photo is what we got. O'Connor was a suspicious character from the start. The year prior to his encounter, O'Connor assembled a team of 60 men to kill the monster with machine guns, spears, bombs, and machetes. In addition, O'Connor claimed to have taken this photo on the same water level as the subject, because he was in the water with it. Subsequent analysis indicate that the flash that illuminated the monster came from 4 meters above the water surface, far from the level it should be if O'Connor was in the water with it. Light should also be visible on the horizon, as this image was reportedly taken at 6:30 a.m. in May. The final nail in the coffin that suggests this is a hoax was the findings of New Scientist reporter Maurice Burton, who visited the spot O'Connor took the photo and found 3 polythene bags and a stick that resembled the monster's head exactly. I think it's safe to say this is a hoax. The Dinsdale film is one of the few video evidence of the monster. Taken in 1960 by aeronautical engineer Tim Dinsdale, it depicts a dark object traveling across the surface of the loch. The subject is traveling at the exact same speed as a boat later recorded on the film, and if that boat was darker in color, it would resemble the monster basically exactly. Close-ups of the object on the film show that the highest point of the monster is suspiciously man-shaped, possibly further suggesting that this is a mere boat. Not much detail is in this footage regardless, and I really don't see it as world-changing evidence. It's also important to understand Tim was obsessed with the monster, taking over 50 visits to the loch from his London home, desperately wanting any slightest bit of evidence. It's possible that this was a case of pareidolia. Dinsdale, in his excitement and passion for the beast, saw a boat that merely looked like a monster. There are also several relatively famous underwater photos of the monster from the 1970s, from a proposed flipper to a head and neck to a face, and as it turns out, most of these were, well, fabrications or misidentifications. The Loch Ness flipper might look at first to be something really appealing and compelling, but it has been enhanced from an original that looked like this. Enhanced meaning upright fabrication from nothing, as the original is clearly just the muddy bottom of the loch, that has been deceptively altered to look like a fin or flipper. The Loch Ness gargoyle turned out to be just a chunk of rotten wood, and as it turns out, this very compelling neck and body photo taken in 1975 actually was not taken in open water as one would make you think. It was actually taken when the camera was in contact with the loch floor, and subsequent examinations of the photo led to the realization that the subject was less than 50 centimeters long. It's obvious that these are cases of pareidolia and not actually pictures of a monster. Possibly my favorite Loch Ness monster photos is the Loch Ness Muppet taken in 1977. This picture is amazingly clear, as we can easily make out a neck, head, and mouth with the skin color and texture. The only problem is the photo is complete bullcrap. Exhibit A, the photographer, Tony Doc Shields.
My name is Shields. Tony Doc Shields to my friends, but you knew that already, didn't you, friend?
This guy is interesting. We'll get a load of this dude.
Doc isn't your average Loch Ness monster enthusiast. He's actually a self-proclaimed wizard, psychic,
Hey,
and
Rose.
magician, who, let's just say, is an interesting character.
The stone is haunted.
Doc claims he was able to summon the creature from the depths of the loch with magical powers and took a picture of it. Doc also promotes an interesting theory of his that the monster isn't a plesiosaur-like animal at all, but a bizarre elephant squid creature, with a white spot in the bottom left-hand corner of the monster actually being an eye, and the neck actually being a proboscis. He produced a sketch of what he believed the monster to look like. Doc has been linked to several other hoaxes of cryptids, including several photographs of Morgor, a Loch Ness monster-like creature which turned out to be plastic models, as well as fairies. Oh, and also he talked about Owlman. The photo has been examined, and experts agree that the subject was superimposed on top of the water and the image is a fake. It's pretty clear from the source that this is undoubtedly a hoax. This photo, taken in 2011, has often been held up as evidence of the monster, as we can easily see the hump of some weird creature. It turned out this hump was a complete fabrication from the documentary Loch Ness, The Ultimate Experiment, and the internet, did its thing and gave misinformation about its origin. Lastly, I'm finishing up with the most recent photos of the monster, the Google Earth ones and the one taken this year. These Google Earth photos of the loch are said to be evidence of a giant monster spotted by satellites. They aren't. It's just a boat creating waves as it travels. The 2016 photo, on the other hand, came out just a few months ago, depicting humps in the loch. It's quite obvious what it is. 3 seals swimming in a straight line, as they commonly do.
Yeah, if you hadn't already been able to tell, you can see right here, that's the head of a seal right there. That is a seal's head. It's his little nose, his squishy little face, and his little eyeball, and yeah, that is 3 seals playing in the water. Just, yeah.
I think I speak for everyone when I say I'm pretty disappointed by all this evidence. I came into this investigation hoping to find something really compelling, but most Loch Ness photos are hoaxes brought on by hysteria and popular media attention, or just things too blurry to make anything out. Even if it is a monster, which in most cases it isn't, it's not compelling at all. It's just a blob moving around. You'd think if the monster actually existed, we'd find better evidence and not just blobs. In conclusion, as far as objective photographic and video evidence goes, the Loch Ness monster is pretty weak and easily explainable by phenomena not related to the monster. If I missed any photos or videos, please request them in the comment section. I'd be happy to research and take a look at them. But for now, I think I can pretty safely say no current evidence supporting the monster's existence, exists. It's kind of sad to see that one of the most iconic cryptids in history is basically unsubstantiated nonsense. And on that imagination-killing, fantasy-destroying note, thanks for watching. Hopefully I'm wrong, and there really is something in the Loch, but until then, all we have is baseless speculation, and that'll be the next and probably last episode of my Loch Ness series, the, what if? Before next time, I just want to thank you and hope you learned something new. I think this might be my last video in 2016, and I just want to say thank you so much for supporting me and enjoying my videos this year. I feel like I've grown up a lot, and I hope you continue to watch my videos in the year to come. Next video will be a paleontology and biology recap of 2016, listing all the discoveries we made, and proving I'm a psychic like Doc. And after that, probably a paleo profile, because I haven't done those in a long time. Well, anyways, I'll see you next time.
All right. That's that. So that that concludes that leg of everything, with kind of giving us a background on the Loch Ness monster, as well as giving us a little bit of background on some famous evidence presented on this case, and why that evidence is probably bullcrap. And I saw Rose jumped into the chat. Good to see you, Rose. Rose mentions night meds down and taking effect. If I type crazy, I'm sorry. No worries, you're good. We'll keep you. We'll keep you all right. All right. So, well, I guess that leads us to the next thing. Has there been any new evidence? Well, actually, there has been. And now this next piece, I know I got a lot of clips tonight, and I apologize, but yeah, there's really not as much to the Loch Ness monster as you think there is. This is definitely one of those major pop culture, everybody knows about the Loch Ness monster. But when you actually dig into it and try and actually look up information on it, it's pretty sparse. So a lot of videos I was able to come up with, but that's about it. So, anywho, let's go ahead. There's a 4-minute clip here on some interesting recent evidence that has come up. This video was posted 3 years ago, but apparently they claim that this is the most compelling evidence yet. So let's see what they've got. All right, there we go. Yeah, there we are.
Our next guest may have taken one of the best ever pictures of the Loch Ness Monster. A creature about 2.5 metres long has been captured on camera from the shores in Scotland.
It's sparking renewed interest in the legend of Nessie and has many asking, could this be the most compelling evidence yet? This is the latest sighting of what's believed to be the Loch Ness Monster.
Okay, I'm no biologist, but that to me kind of looks like a walrus or a seal that is partially submerged. I'm just saying.
Ripples in the water and what appears to be the body of a creature. Taken last year, it's only just emerged after the man who took it was going through old photos. So is it Nessie or not? It's been almost 90 years since this iconic image made headlines in 1934. Known as the surgeon's photo, it later turned out to be a hoax, but even that couldn't kill off the intrigue. Since then, there have been hundreds more reports. A US expedition claimed to have taken images of a Nessie-shaped creature underwater.
We feel so strongly with regard to the reality of what we have to warn the Scottish authorities and the British authorities to look carefully into the matter.
In 1996,
it was a whale-like object.
Then there was this extraordinary video from 3 years ago. And last year, Eddie joined the hunt too.
Anyone seen the Loch Ness Monster yet?
We've got something over there.
Where?
It's white. Seriously white.
Now a new photo edging us ever closer to cracking the mystery of a monster in the Loch.
Photographer Steve Challis joins us now. Steve, I warn you right up front, my partner here on Sunrise, Sam, has seen the Loch Ness Monster while on a Contiki bus tour during her gap year. So we've got eyewitness accounts as well. Tell us about...
They saw some white. Uh-huh. I'm sure they did. Some white while on the water. Kind of like the top of a wave. Just a thought.
Your eyewitness account, what exactly happened? What did you see?
Were you drunk too, Steve?
I wasn't going to dub you in.
Yeah. I was on holiday with my brother in Scotland, and we cast Urquhart, and I was taking photographs. To be true, there were so many Chinese tourists there that I was taking photographs of the opposite side of the loch, and there was this swirl in the water in front of me. And then suddenly started taking some photographs, and suddenly this fish just surfaced. There's this photograph where it's got like a bow wave there. There's something under the water. The next thing, there was this fish. It's a fluke that I managed to get it, to be quite honest with you. And it just came out the water, and it was momentarily, and then it was gone again.
Okay, so what do you reckon it was, Steve? Are you a believer?
Well, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, no, I don't actually believe in the Loch Ness Monster. I put this in the first place because I thought it was some sort of fish. I wanted to know if anybody else had seen anything like that. But I have a theory about what it actually is.
I just want to point out for a second here. So this guy who they brought on as an expert on the Loch Ness Monster doesn't even believe in the Loch Ness Monster. And I have a serious issue with these interviewers, like the one lady where she's being very dismissive and whatnot. So, yeah, it's kind of the same issue that I had with that Piers Morgan interview where they were talking to Nick Pope and Jeremy Corbell about the recent information around David Grush and whatnot with the UAP situation. I always get really irritated whenever news interviewers, people that are supposed to have a little bit of actual, integrity, I guess you could say, kind of just act like total dick pistons and are just immediately dismissive of what somebody's talking about. Look, yeah, Look, I mean, you could tell me you're a time traveler from the year like 2050 and that you have like the lotto numbers from the next like 30 lotteries. I mean, fine, I want the numbers, but at the same time, I'm gonna hedge my bets on this one.
And I think it's a catfish, if I'm going to be truthful.
Gee, that's a huge catfish.
Well, yeah, it is. It's a big one. But you see, the funny thing is, Loch Ness is open to the sea at the north end
Yeah.
in Inverness, and they get seals in the loch. So I'm wondering whether it's something that's come in from the outside, which would explain an awful lot.
You didn't Photoshop it?
Yeah, can you swear on whatever God you believe in that you didn't Photoshop this picture?
Yeah, sure. No, definitely. I mean, I'm not going to deny I use Photoshop, so many people do, but no, I don't think you could have Photoshopped this one, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
The wakes alone would be almost impossible to do if you look at it, because it's not like a wake would be from a boat or anything like that.
So you think it's a catfish that may have bred with a seal? Steve, appreciate. Appreciate.
He did not say that. We want to get this right, Kochi.
Does it look like what you remember?
No, it does not.
Oh, it's different.
What I saw. I couldn't tell you what I saw. It was a long time ago, but it didn't look like that. I swear to God, if you sit by the Loch Ness for long enough, you will see something. If you drink enough beer.
With a couple of brews.
Look, I get it. It's a bit of an odd and sort of a wacky subject, but again, it's just like, can we not be just that dismissive of everything? Just irritates me. Anyway, so here's something we're gonna do. So to kind of get a little bit of a geographical layout of the Loch Ness. So here's the United Kingdom, Ireland, and then up here is Scotland. And this little orange highlighted section right here, which is kind of a dividing line between this, like these two areas, that's Scotland. And that is where this orange piece right here, that is Loch Ness. Now, the Loch Ness is very long, very narrow, and that's southern point here near Fort Augustus. And when they talk about it, actually has ocean access here at Inverness. And you can see that there's like right here in Inverness, this channel opens right out into the ocean and just narrows down here. And there's a very large, river that runs all the way through here, all the way on down to Loch Ness. So they mentioned that Loch Ness has seals. Well, where do you think the seals come from? They come in from the coast and they swim on down and they get into here. Damn it.
Phrasing. Hey, phrasing, mother. Phrasing. Phrasing.
Yeah. Anyway. So yeah. That kind of gives you a little bit of geography there. Or as the Brits call it, geography. And yeah, so you can see Loch Ness has a lot of space. This place is really deep, and look, hey, I mean, it looks great, but yeah, you have ocean access. So anything that can get through all of this, depending on how deep it is, all the way to the ocean, can theoretically swim here. Anything from, again, you're thinking about it, and it's like anything from, dolphins to a small whale could potentially swim down in here and then swim back out potentially, depending on depth. But I mean, that is something to consider. Could account for a lot of the could account for a lot of the potential sightings of weird things that they, don't really understand what they. All right. Yeah. Digger says, yep, I've swam with seals in the Fraser River, freshwater river that leads out to the ocean. Yep, exactly. And, yep. Hey, what's going on, D? What? Good to see you. Happy to have you join as always. Even if you're a little bit late, that's fine. I say we're just happy you're here. I just had to make sure we all paid attention to it. Yep. Yep. Ghost Tree says, Kaiser, Mighty, etc. Have an appreciation for my weird sense of humor, which I appreciate. Yeah, well, we're all a little bit warped and effed in the head here, so it just kind of comes with the territory. Like I said, comes with the territory.
I'm gonna come.
Oh, goodness. So, now that we've seen this, I mean, I guess the next question is, well, have there been any other sightings out there? Oh, over here on Rumble, Spirit Star says, could it have been a low water levels or in a random rock? So, from what I understand, the Loch is extremely deep and very narrow. So, if there is potentially a rock that gets spotted out there, like during low, like if the water's low or something, which I highly doubt because it has such easy access from both its northern end here near Inverness and even down here on the southern side by Fort Augusta. There's still several rivers and estuaries that lead to and from it and go all the way out. And say this goes into Loch Loy, and yeah, eventually they all make their way out to the ocean again from one side to the other. Again, theoretically, something could swim in through the ocean all the way up here, go through Inverness to Loch Ness, and then just go all the way through the river and channel system back out to the ocean on the other side, theoretically. So, anyway, I guess the next question comes down to, is there any other possible sightings or things like this that have been noted out there? Well, I mean, Ogopogo is one that has been supposedly spotted. Actually, when I started doing my my research for this, I did not actually think about Ogopogo. I totally forgot that one. Apologize, Digger. And so I didn't have anything to really bring to the table on that one. I tried looking for a couple. I've heard there are some strange, like plesiosaur-like sightings in like Africa, maybe even in the Amazon. But when I actually dug through and tried to find those, I didn't really pull up anything that I could actually show. But one thing I did find was held up for a long time as kind of really one of the most compelling cases for potentially this creature. And yeah, here's the part of the show where I'm going to have to actually go ahead and issue a very specific warning because, yeah, this part could, potentially make some people a little bit ill. There is some, there is some dead body in this photo. It's not human. It's some kind of animal. It clearly is something that died of natural causes, but just letting everybody know, if you got a weak stomach or you're not really used to seeing stuff like that, might be a little bit stomach turning. But I thought it was worth actually bringing up. Yeah, I guess I did say that there, Bobby. There is some dead body in this. Yeah. Anyway. So, yeah, I wish I had like some kind of like alarm or some like some kind of klaxon sign or something like that. Oh my God. Viewer discretion advised. Anyway, so in 1977, a Japanese fishing trawler, the Zuiyomaru, off the east coast of New Zealand, drug something up in its net. And, well, what they drug up was shocking, to say the least. And I just closed out the damn window. Why do I always do this to myself every single time? Okay, there we go. Found it. Whew. Solved. So, whenever they were fishing off the coast of New Zealand, again, this is 1977, and they pulled up something that they just flat out couldn't explain at the time. And so here's your warning, final warning. If you have a weak constitution, you might want to shut this off in 3, 2, 1, and present. Add to stream. Okay. Oop. Damn it. There we go. Okay. So this got dredged up. And yeah, it's pretty grotesque. So, as you can see my cursor here finally. So it appears to be something with a long neck, with a roundish head here, with what appear to be flippers on the front, and this body that kind of drapes down. So, for anybody that's looking, you see this rope. This is a light back here behind this thing. It's a floodlight that's on the fishing trawler. That's not anything else. So yeah, this is the biggest and most enhanced version of this photo that I can find. So yeah, there is again some kind of what looks like a head, a little eye socket, a long neck, flippers, and whatnot. So this thing apparently measured somewhere in the ballpark of about, I believe it was like 20 something feet or so, or close to 20 feet. The crew was convinced it was an unidentified animal, and despite the potential biological significance and the curious discovery, the captain basically ordered the crew to just dump this rotting, stinking, just half decomposed carcass overboard, and as risk to not spoiling the fish that they caught. So we have Captain Akira Tanaka to thank for not bringing this one ashore, but they were actually smart enough to take some samples and take those back to land where they could be analyzed. Now, they really weren't analyzed for a long time, but we did finally get an answer to what this creature is. And no, it's not a plesiosaur as it appears. It is something far more pedestrian. So, this is actually the carcass of what's called a basking shark. So, yeah, there we are. All right, there we are. So this is a basking shark. And basking sharks are very big, but they, contrary to the fact that they are sharks, they, as you can see, don't really have a lot of big teeth. They instead have, they instead basically open their mouth really wide and they swim through the water and they just scoop up, plankton and krill and other small, they're almost like baleen whales. They're kind of like filter feeders. So despite how big they are, they actually feed on very, very small, tiny little stuff. So there's another one. I mean, you can see how large this thing is in comparison to a diver. Might be a little bit of forced perspective on this one, but I mean, basking sharks are big. They're pretty darn large. Yes, it is like a whale shark. So, again, look big and formidable, but they're actually pretty remarkably not all that. I mean, they're really not aggressive or anything. And yeah, they're filter feeders. So it kind of brings up the question, how did we get this out of this? Well, it actually is quite interesting. Somebody was able to do a more detailed breakdown and kind of show what happened, because the tissue samples that were gained from the actual cadaver, the carcass, if you will, were analyzed, and they actually were found to match like the amino acid proteins of the basking shark. They have a very specific type of protein. So here's, again, you see what looks like the long neck and the flippers and everything in the body. Well, it turns out what's interesting is that when this particular shark dies and starts to decay, one of the first things that apparently falls off is this entire lower mandible here. The entire lower half of its jaw just falls off, which there should be all of this right here. That's actually not the front of the shark's. That's only just part of the front of the shark's head and nose. But yeah, all of their mouth and gills and everything are supposed to be under there and rotted off. The dorsal fin is gone. The other fin is gone. And part of the tail fell off. Part of the tail that's not supported by the cartilaginous vertebrae that runs down this thing. I mean, yeah, these sharks are fish. They don't have bones. They have cartilage. And I guess it was just kind of enough to hold together. So once all these bits that are in red fell off, it amazingly looks like a plesiosaur. This was held up as one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for a long time about this case. So, again, all this gory, nasty mess of meat and cartilage at one time was a humble basking shark. Probably just died of old age or whatever, and then, well, what happens when nature takes its course. So, there is actually a really cool backstory on this, so I'll just kind of go up here to it. So, and this is actually thanks to Darren Naish. So, time for another Zoocryptic mega thread, okay? In which we examine the backstory to a photo or film said to depict a cryptid or monster. But this time, we're not looking at a photo claimed to have been a live animal, but photos which depict a very dead one, a rotten carcass, in fact. I am, of course, talking about the Zuyomaru carcass, the large, decomposed body of a sea creature captured by accident in the nets of a Japanese fishing vessel, the Zuyomaru, on April 25th, 1977, while they were about 48 kilometers off the east coast of Christchurch, New Zealand. The name Zuyomaru has been written in several ways in the literature as Zuyomaru, basically compound or split up. I'm here to follow the style used in the 1978 report on the carcass, Zuyomaru, like that. And the Zuyomaru carcass will be called the ZMC from here on. I like the fact that they actually make this a little bit easier for us. So, we actually have a picture of the Zuyomaru. The Zuyomaru is a 2,455-ton trawler captained by Akira Tanaka and part of the Tokyo-based Teiyo Fishery Company fleet. It specialized on mackerel and was trawling for them at a depth of 300 meters when a large object became entangled in the net. It was the rotting carcass of a very big vertebrate. As a vertebrate about 10 meters long. That's huge. 10 meters is freaking giant. That's at least 30 feet long. Initially identified as a rotting whale, it was hoisted on board and dumped on the deck, and a series of color photos were taken by crewmen and acting section chief Teiyo Fishery Company Michihiko Yano. Its appearance wasn't consistent with the whale idea, since it seemingly had a longish neck, small head, straight tail, and 4 large diamond-shaped flippers or paddles. Its skin was missing, meaning that all the underlying musculature and some skeletal components were exposed. In his 1978 article on the carcass, Tokiharu Abe said that people familiar with dead shark, specifically shark finners, recognized it from the photos as a decomposed shark. But others note a suggestion made by crew members that it might be a giant turtle lacking its shell. Note the turtle shell is the rib cage, so a turtle can't lose its shell. At 10 meters, it would have been one hell of a turtle, bigger than the largest known fossil species. That is a turtle the size of a Volkswagen. That is a big-ass turtle. All right. But could it be the carcass of a creature thought to be extinct like a plesiosaur? Accounts show that some people aboard the Zuyomaru thought that it was a big deal. Perhaps a significant scientific find worthy of being documented and recorded as best as possible. After it had been photos were taken, some showing the carcass while suspended on a wire. Others had been, after it had been dumped on the deck. Yano took measurements and produced the diagram, but his measurements can only be approximate since they and the diagram were written down months after April 25th. Indeed, they consist of a great many suspiciously round numbers. These show the whole object was about 10 meters long, tail section was about 2 meters long, the head about 45 centimeters long, and the neck 1.5 meters long. Consider some of those features. Skull 45 centimeters long. This was a big object. Yano's diagram also made it clear that he thought what he was dealing with, that he thought he knew what he's dealing with. He drew the schematic plesiosaur skeleton and with 2 smaller sized paddle pairs, a distinct tail lacking fins, distinct neck, short rounded snout with a dashed line indicating where he thought the mandible should be. He seemingly made up his mind that it was a plesiosaur carcass. So yeah, this is the what he drew. Okay. The carcass was kept on board for about an hour, but concerns that it might spoil the catch resulted in the decision that it should be dumped overboard. Sato took a few samples. He pulled fibers from the fins. We'll come back to those. And before this happened, precise longitude and latitude data on both pickup and drop-off points relevant to the carcass are available and were published by KG Naso in 1978. The seafloor here has an extensive area of continental shelf, and there is a subtropical convergence where southward and northward flowing currents meet. Nasu suggested that the carcass would have drifted south after being dumped, ending south in Chatham Rise. On returning to Taiyo Fishery headquarters in Tokyo, Yano shared the photos with Dr. Fujio Yasuda, a professor of ichthyology at the Tokyo University of Fisheries. Yasuda shared them with other scientists, the aim being to see if the ZMC could be identified. Seeing this as a chance for publicity, but perhaps also honestly thinking that this was really a massive scientific news, it's hard to tell. The Taiyo Fishery Companies opted to hold a press conference in July 20th, 1977. The results of which were ambiguous. Unsurprisingly, the resulting newspaper, TV, and radio reports veered into the sensational, with many implying or stating that it was a modern plesiosaur, a marine Nessie, or perhaps a new kind of giant shark. Immediately, the idea arose that the drop-off site should be revisited such that the ZMC could be recaptured for science. Apparently, one or two vessels did go to the location and fish around in an effort to find it again. Needless to say, the efforts weren't successful. Were people really thinking that they could just that the carcass would just be floating, stationary, just a few meters below the surface? Of course not. It would have sunk. Partly as an exercise in damage limitation, the Taiyo Fishery Company produced a follow-up report on July 25th, in which they announced results of the preliminary study which Yasuda and Shigeru Kamura had performed, or rather were performing, on samples which Yano collected. But at this point, the conclusions were that the taxonomic affiliation of the animal could not be determined, which is just about the worst result you can give to a mystery-mongering media. We don't know yet. It is assured to be synonymous with, yes, it's a goddamn monster. Whereas what it actually means is we need more time, science is slow. Dr. Tadayoshi Sasaki, president of the Tokyo University of Fisheries, thought that the best course of action was to arrange a scientific symposium. He invited 12 ichthyologists, mammalogists, biochemists, and other scientists to a formal meeting on September 1st, 1977, and also held a second, larger meeting on September 19th. A series of technical papers were submitted, all of which were published in a very special report published by the Société Franco-Japonaise d'Oceanographie in Tokyo. I have a copy, and it's an interesting read. I apologize if my extra languaging is a little bit crap. I only really know enough Spanish to basically say yes, no, hello, goodbye, where's the bathroom, give me a beer. And yeah, it's obvious that by the time the most popular suggestion among scientists was that the ZMC was thought to be a very large shark, specifically a basking shark. Ikuwo Obata and Yoshiro Tamoda compared the carcass with diverse vertebrates. They noted the dermal fibers visible on the surface were like those of mammals and not those of fish, and that the smell resembled that of marine mammals rather than the teleost fishes or sharks. Obata and Tomoda also mention the option that of an unnamed biologist inclined toward the shark concept, their term, who, quote, told us that he had an impression that the animal in question would not be a basking shark. Okay. They concluded that the carcass might have been that of a shark or a marine reptile, or they basically couldn't identify it. This paper is the weirdest and weakest, and a lot included in the collection, and the only one which ends with pre-cryptozoology spin. Fujio Yasuda and Yasuhiko Taki compared the ZMC with fishes and agreed with the shark identification, as did Yoshikazu Hasegawa and Teruya Ueno, who specifically tested the plesiosaur claim and found it wanting, as did ichthyologist Tokiharu Abe. Sorry, my contacts are drying out, so I'm having trouble reading. And I don't have my glasses. Suishige Seta looked at the state of decomposition on the carcass, basically saying that the condition of the carcass surface showed that it had been decomposing for a while. What's obvious from several of these papers, and was also obvious from Yano's photos anyway, is that the ZMC only looks like a plesiosaur carcass. One is if you, one, unaware of previous cases of this sort of thing, read on, and two, ignore or misinterpret several anatomical details. On point one, it's hardly the first time this has happened. Sea monster literature includes several famous cases stretching back to the early 1800s, where the decomposed bodies of sharks were misinterpreted by their finders to be the carcasses of plesiosaur-like monsters. The oldest and most famous of these is the 1808 carcass from Stronsay in the Orkneys, Scotland, said to have a long neck, a covering of bristles, 3 pairs of limbs, and a long tail. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Vertebrae and other bits and pieces of the carcass were retained and studied by Sir Elvard Home, and numerous details showed them to be basking shark remains. Another example of the Scapa Flow carcass of 1941, also found on the Orkneys, and implied to be a plesiosaur-like monster until later identified as another basking shark carcass. I'm starting to see a pattern here. What happens during shark decomposition is that the jaw and gill arches fall away, leaving only the chondrocranium. The dorsal and caudal fin beak down or fall away, simplifying the carcass's shape, and the external surface decays to produce fibrous or hairy appearance. The result is what's known as a pseudo-plesiosaur carcass, here illustrated by Bernard Helmvans, Glenn Kuban, and Marcus Himmler. This stuff is very familiar if you know the sea monster or cryptozoology literature. It's covered in just about every book. And it's always a bit surprising that Yano and the other people promoting a monster identification for the ZMC were unaware of this. Incidentally, pseudo-plesiosaur is often attributed to author Daniel Cohen. Note, not French economist Daniel Cohen, but this isn't right. It was actually used by Bernard Helmvans in his 1965 Le Grand Serpent des Mers and his English translation In the Wake of the Sea Serpents. Okay. Even Yano's photos demonstrate the shark nature of the ZMC. The ZMC skull is not in the least bit like that of a tetrapod. It's amorphous in shape and covered with long spine-like filaments that are never a feature of a tetrapod skull. And some views demonstrate the presence of the prominent dorsal opening, the emphysemal foramen, characteristic of sharks, and obviously in the Stronce brain case, brain case as shown here. Montage by Marcus Himmler. The ventral surface of the DMC skull, which we can see in the photo we're lying on the deck, are also identical in the shape to a basking shark, basking shark condocranium. Note the triangular form, the pointed rostrum, and flaring processes at the back. There. Incidentally, it's interesting to point interesting point I have to make here, even though it's not really reflected in the images used in this thread, that Yano's photos of the carcass are very good and sufficiently high in resolution that large blown up to versions reveal an excellent level of detail. I say this because such blow-ups have been created by sea monster carcass researcher Marcus Himmler. They look great. Anyway, the fin configuration of the ZMC is also that of a shark. Yano thought that a big fin, which flopped over on the right side of the carcass, was the massive right pectoral flipper, but the photos which show the carcass from behind reveal that it's not a pectoral fin, but a dorsal fin. As Hasegawa and Unyo said in 1978, the position is too high and close to the vertebral column to be a pectoral fin. Needless to say, this large dorsal fin is consistent with a shark identification drawing by Glenn Cuban. We're getting to the bottom of this here. Also worth mentioning here is the size of the ZMC was consistent with a basking shark identification. 10 meters is within the range of this species, albeit very much on the upper end and representing a size rare in modern populations. So as you can see from this little this little thing here, so compared to a large adult, like in this case a swimmer, that's a big shark. It's a good thing he's not out to eat you. The largest ever recorded was in 1851 at 12.7 meters. Yeesh. And distribution is in keeping with the identification too, since basking sharks occur throughout the southern Pacific and specifically around New Zealand attached range map. And can we be even more sure that it was definitely a basking shark? Yes, we can. Several pieces of physical evidence demonstrate the shark identity. The limbs of the carcass are very obviously contained at their tips and edges, long fibers formed from a horn-like material. As mentioned earlier, Yano extracted several of these from one of the four flippers. He washed them to get rid of the smell, treated them with an antiseptic solution, specifically bleach, aka sodium hyperchlorate, and air-dried them on the vessel. They were given to the Teo Fisheries Company and then to the Tokyo University of Fisheries, where they were studied by Shigeru Kimura and his team of colleagues. The fibers, figured in Kimura's paper and refigured here, displayed features showing that they were composed of elastidin, a form of collagen unique to sharks. They were rigid, needle-like fibers with a translucent light brown color which tapered towards both ends. They shrank to about 33% of their original length when heated to about 63 degrees C in water. This is characteristic of shark fin rays, and in fact, experiments show how basking shark fin rays have a shrinking point of about 65 degrees C. Kimura also examined one of the fibers under SEM and noted obvious banding. The bands being arranged at about 450 to 500 angstrom intervals. 1 angstrom, or A, equals 1/10,000,000th of a meter, which is different from the 600 to 700 of typical collagen, but just like the banding present in the basking shark elastidin. They also examined the amino acid composition of the fibers, and it was similar to a basking shark elastidin, but differed in lacking the high tyrosine and histidine levels typical of basking sharks, which was surprising, but the ZMC fibers were treated with bleach. Kimura were also aware of this, and therefore took control fiber from the basking shark and treated it with bleach too, and found tyrosine and histidine to be decomposed as the sequence. They used the bleach explanation of what looked initially like the anomalous result. For completeness, I'll add that Kimura found the ZMC fibers to differ from basking shark fibers in that they're known as the reducible cross-links, chemical components which bound polymer chains, and the ZMC fibers had a low number of cross-links when compared with elastidin. But cross-links are known to be very liable to decomposition, and their reduction was almost certainly a consequence of bleach treatment too. All in all, there's a pretty strong reasons here to conclude that the ZMC fibers were indeed those of a basking shark, ergo, the whole carcass was that of a basking shark, at the very least, a closely related species to it. And that's the story. Okay. I apologize that took so damn long to get through, but I wanted to make sure that I was thorough in getting through all that. And now my contacts are dried the F out. Okay, see ya, Digger. Have a great night. I'm gonna say, I bet this thing smelled as bad as a Taco Bell bathroom at 11 p.m. Yeah. Woof. All right. So, we've seen that. Well, now there's just kind of a question of, well, is there any, are there any other, if this isn't a plesiosaur, is there any possibility that an ancient creature of some kind, basically like a living dinosaur, could still be out there? Creatures like that could still be out there? Well, actually, yes, there are. And, well, we got a couple of short videos here. Yeah, actually, now that I look at it, those are about just shy of 10 minutes a pop. So we're not going to worry about that. We're already over 2 hours. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and read this article here. And so this is, there we go. And so this is an article. This is 12 of the oldest marine species that still exist today. Go ahead and blow that up just a nudge there. So first up on the list is the frilled shark. With strange eel-like features, this animal doesn't look like many of the other sharks we're familiar with today. It is a shark, though. It's just 150 million years old and hasn't evolved much. All of the prehistoric creatures that still exist, the frilled shark might be one of the weirdest marine species ever. Oh, cool. Let's say it looks like we might have a raid coming in. Fantastic. Okay. There we are. Hey, what's going on, MG Law? Okay, well, now that we know that we're going to have folks dropping in, I might as well go ahead and fire up the videos. That's what we're doing. All right, well, we're going to switch over here, and here we go.
Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well, and of course Arnie does too. Now in the present day there are very few reminders of the creatures who used to roam the earth, with some of the only relics being fossils and the oil which we use to power our cars. But there are some species on earth today that have survived since the dinosaurs roamed the earth, and these so-called living fossils are usually very well adapted, which is why they've been able to survive to the present day. But there aren't just living fossils on the land and in the skies, as there's actually plenty of fish that are known as living fossils, and there really are quite a few of them. But in today's video I will be going through 5 of these living fossil species, and if you want me to include any others, leave them down in the comments below. And for our first living fossil, we'll be heading over to the freshwaters of southern Canada and the northern USA, as we have the bowfin. Now the bowfin is personally one of my favourite fish, and one of the reasons I like them is because they really are one of a kind, because even though they look very similar to snakeheads, they are the sole surviving species of their order, and in the modern day they can be found in heavily vegetated clearwater swamps, and some of these waters can be stagnant and are normally very poorly oxygenated habitats. But just like many other primitive fish, the bowfin is able to breathe atmospheric oxygen, meaning that they're perfectly adapted to these habitats, and although they're limited to North America today, fossil deposits indicate ammiforms were once widespread in both freshwater.
Hi, Rabbit and MG Law. Good to see you. That's what I said when I was
North
muted.
and South America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Now, bowfin are stalking ambush predators, and they typically do most of their hunting at night, where they move into shallow waters to feed on fish, crawfish, mollusks, and aquatic insects. And on this diet, they can reach a very respectable 109 centimeters or around 43 inches. And by looking at some of these images, you may have noticed some of the bowfin's defensive adaptations, as not only do they have a very effective camouflage, but they also have an eye spot near the base of their tail. And this is a defensive adaptation seen in many other fish species, and it tricks predators into biting their tail instead of biting their head.
Oh, looks like we got a raid coming in there. Say, what's going on there? Talking Trash and Truth. Awesome. Grimm's Bar, how you doing? Fantastic, everybody. All right. Winning reality raid. Awesome. Good to see you all. Say happy to have you all jumping on in there. So we've been going for a little bit. We're covering the Loch Ness Monster. There was actually a recent investigation, is that one of the largest investigations on the Loch Ness Monster in 50 years. And well, they turned up a whole lot of nothing. So we've been kind of going through the history of the Loch Ness Monster, some of the famous cases, evidence, whatever we can find on it, and just kind of bringing it all home. So, all right there. So, see me later. Good to see you. Danielle, happy to have you aboard there. Shizzy Wisnut, good to see you, buddy. Awesome. Say, MG Law says, is anyone really surprised they turned up nothing? No, not really. To be completely honest with you. I mean, I'd be more surprised if they did turn up something. So, there we go. And we're just kind of going through some 5 prehistoric fish that are still alive today. These remarkable living fossils, as it were. Hey, Winning Reality, what's up, man? Good to see you.
And this adaptation might have been a lot more effective when it had more predators to worry about, as today the main predator of bowfin are other larger bowfin. But of course, many people fish for this species, and unfortunately in recent times, many of them have been killed, as people think that they are the similarly looking northern snakehead, which is a problem invasive species. And when it comes to the mating season for the bowfin, the males get a very green underbelly, which is rarely seen in the fish world. And part of the reason why they have survived so long is because they make very good parents, as the male will build a nest, and after the eggs are hatched, the male bowfin will protect the fry. And they're called a living fossil for a reason, as its family dates back 145 million years ago to the Jurassic period, when dinosaurs such as Allosaurus and Diplodocus were walking the earth. So in my opinion, it's one of the most interesting fish in the world. But for our next species, we'll be heading into the oceans, as we have the coelacanth. Now I say the coelacanth, but there's actually two coelacanth species alive today, the West Indian coelacanth and the Indonesian coelacanth. But for a very long time, coelacanths were thought to be extinct, as before 1938, they were thought to have gone extinct 65 million years ago in the Cretaceous period. But that was before a West Indian coelacanth was discovered off the coast of South Africa, and later on the Indonesian coelacanth was discovered in an Indonesian market in 1997, and eventually a live specimen was caught 1 year later. And one of the reasons why we went so long without seeing one of these fish is because they're mostly nocturnal and spend their days resting in caves. And one of the strangest things about the coelacanths are their 4 fleshy fins, and only the most primitive fish have these fleshy limbs, and they are known as lobed fin fish. And coelacanths mainly feed at the bottom of the ocean, normally feeding on fish and various cephalopods. And although that one time in history there were coelacanths all over the planet, their numbers are a lot smaller nowadays, as the West Indian coelacanth is stated as being critically endangered, whereas the Indonesian coelacanth is vulnerable. And the main problem that the coelacanths are facing is overfishing, as fishermen don't tend to target coelacanths directly, as they're known for not tasting very nice at all. But fishermen accidentally catch them when they're fishing for oil fish, which I featured in my poisonous fish video. But fishermen have been urged to put the coelacanths back in the water or hand any dead specimens on to scientists. But coelacanths are known as one of the oldest living creatures on this planet, as they're known to have been around for at least 407 million years, and hopefully with a little help they'll be on this planet for a few million years more. But for our next species, we'll be staying in the ocean, as we have sawfish. Now there are actually 5 living species of sawfish, and although they look like sharks, they are actually members of the ray family, and today they are found worldwide in tropical and subtropical regions. And when it comes to weapons in the animal kingdom, none of them really come close to the sawfish, and although it may look like they have teeth on their rostrum, these are actually modified scales. But unfortunately today, most sawfish species are either endangered or critically endangered, as their specialized weapon also gets them in a lot of trouble, as they're known to easily get caught up in fishing nets and then eventually drown. But unfortunately they're also hunted for their fins, for both the shark fin soup trade and for parts of traditional medicine, and their only real remaining strongholds are in northern Australia and Florida. And if you manage to see a full-grown specimen, you're not likely to forget it, as they are some of the largest fish in the world, with some species reaching a length of around 7.6 meters or around 25 feet. And although they have an intimidating appearance, they're generally harmless to humans, but can inflict serious injuries when captured or when defending themselves. And like many other predatory marine fish, the sawfish has electroreceptors which help it find its prey, and these sensory organs are normally all the way along the rostrum, and this helps them detect their prey, which is normally crustaceans and mollusks, before thrashing their rostrum around, making them easier to eat. And as their numbers are dwindling in the wild, it is illegal to buy or sell any part of a sawfish in the USA, and if you are lucky enough to see a sawfish in the wild, you can help out conservation efforts by reporting your encounters with the sawfish. And sawfish and their ancestors are thought to have been on this planet for around 56 million years, which dates back to the Eocene period. And although not directly related, a very similarly looking species was thought to have been preyed upon by Spinosaurus. So although the future doesn't look bright for the sawfish species, they have survived a very long time. But our next group of prehistoric fish are the gars. Now there are 7 species of gar still alive today, and they can be found in North America, Central America, Cuba, and the Caribbean. And in the wild, gars are apex predators, normally feeding on other fish and aquatic invertebrates, and they really do have some nasty weaponry to deal with these prey items.
Yeah, there's a reason why there's a fish called the alligator gar. It literally looks like the head of an alligator, but on a giant-ass fish. Jungman Chili says, I want to go to the Tampa Aquarium this winter. I will search for these. Very cool. I say, I would love to go to an aquarium. There's one actually not too far away over, I think in Cincinnati. I can't remember. It's been a while, but I have to go. Might have to go check that one out. So Kaiser, what show is this? I want to reference this later. This is Edge of Reality. We're on episode 16. We're covering the Loch Ness Monster. There we go.
But the main reason that they have survived so long is that they're highly adaptable fish. As just like the bowfin, they can breathe atmospheric oxygen, meaning that they can live in very oxygen-poor conditions. As well as this, they have very thick scales, which makes them very hard to penetrate, with only really alligators, which are living fossils in their own right, being able to puncture their scales. And although they don't make the best of parents, they do have a little trick to make sure that their fry will hatch safely, as gar themselves are not toxic, but their eggs are, meaning that most would-be predators leave them alone. And today, the largest species, the alligator gar, is thought to reach sizes of around 3 meters or 9.8 feet, making them one of the largest freshwater fish in the world. And although they're mainly found in North and Central America today, fossilized gars have been found in Europe, India, and South America. And fossils from this order have been known to date back to the late Jurassic, around 145 million years ago. So
yeah, Jungman Shelley, this is by the channel Suki, TSUKI, 5 prehistoric fish alive today. Sorry about that.
Of all the prehistoric fish I've featured so far, the gars are probably the most popular. But for our next living fossil, we'll be heading over to the freshwaters of Africa, as we have the bichirs. Now, bichirs are some of the most diverse living fossils, and in the modern day, they're normally found in swampy, heavily vegetated waters. And just like the gars and the bowfin, they're able to breathe atmospheric oxygen. And although they're active in the day, they tend to be most active at night, feeding on small invertebrates, crustaceans, and insects. And to find these food items in the dark, they use their excellent sense of smell, as they rarely, if ever, use their sight to find their prey. And feeding on this diet, the largest species of bichir is thought to reach a maximum size of around a meter or 39 inches. And although most bichir species have stable populations in the wild, they are quite vulnerable, as habitat destruction due to agricultural and urban development have really put a dent in their numbers. But I'd back the bichir to be on this planet a lot longer, as bichir fossils date back to at least 250 million years ago, to the Triassic period, so hopefully we'll see their numbers grow in the future. But that's about it for this video. As I said at the start, there are plenty of prehistoric fish still alive today, so if you want to see me feature any of them, leave them down in the comments below, and I'm sure I'll get around to them at some point. But thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like these, and until next time, goodbye.
And I actually do have a part 2 to this, so that way we can see 5 more prehistoric fish still alive today. And then after that, we will start to close things down for the evening. I do have one other clip, but it's a good one. You'll enjoy it. So stay tuned for that. You'll love what we're going to end this one on.
Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well, and of course Arnie does too. Now, I really enjoyed making my last video on prehistoric fish, so I thought it would be a good idea to make a part 2, as there are plenty of fish that have been on this planet for millions of years. So today I will be going through 5 more prehistoric fish that are still alive today. And as there are so many, if you think you know any that could be on this list, then let me know down in the comments, as I might make another video on this topic. But today we'll start off in the saltwaters and freshwaters of North America and Europe, as we have the lampreys. Now, there are 38 species of lamprey on the planet today, and they aren't the most popular of fish. And this isn't just because of their horrific mouth and hooked tongue, but because they're a parasite, as some species of lamprey feed by suckering themselves onto other fish and rasping away at their flesh with their hooked tongue. And this rather frightening way of feeding inspired a badly received horror movie. But out of the 38 species alive today, only 18 of them are carnivorous, as some non-carnivorous species live off reserves that were acquired while they were larvae. And lampreys have become a big problem in the Great Lakes, as because of man-made waterways, they've been able to find their way into the Great Lakes and feed upon the popular game fish. And if the game fish don't die directly from a lamprey bite, the majority of them die through infection. And it's thought that one adult lamprey can kill 40 pounds of fish every year, so it's very clear why people want them at the Great Lakes. But so far their numbers have been successfully limited by putting in physical barriers such as dams. And to avoid being predated on, lampreys tend to feed at night, as there are a few other fish species that will target the lamprey, and they're known to be a target for fish-eating birds. And although parasites are some of the most unpopular types of animals, it is a very successful survival strategy, as the lampreys are thought to have survived mostly unchanged for around 360 million years. And this dates all the way back to the Carboniferous period. So although they may look like something out of a horror film, they are one of the oldest living fish on this planet today. But for our next species, we'll be heading over to the freshwaters of Africa, as we have the freshwater butterfly fish. Now, this species is very popular in the aquarium trade, so I'm sure many of you will be very familiar with it. And normally found in slow-moving and still waters, and tend to show a preference for swamps. And like many other prehistoric fish, they have a few adaptations that have helped them survive this long. As in the wild, they're mainly insectivorous, and they monitor the surface of the water, waiting for any insect to land so that they can quickly be snapped up. And on the planet today, there are thought to be 2 populations of African butterfly fish. One population living in the Congo Basin, and the other living in the Niger Basin. And these 2 species look so similar that experts struggle to tell them apart. However, scientists discovered that the genetic sequences of these 2 populations differed by around 15%. And this was very surprising, as different populations of the same species species normally have a difference of around 2 or 3%, and 15% difference is more typical of what you'd find in a whole fish family. And this team of scientists then found that this genetic separation had occurred more than 57 million years ago. And this was especially shocking for the scientists, as the physical characteristics of these two populations had barely changed. And this shows us that the species is so well adapted that they barely changed in this time. And just like many other fish that inhabit the swampy waters of Africa, the African butterfly fish can breathe atmospheric oxygen. But as they only reach a maximum size of around 12 centimeters or 4.8 inches, they can fall prey to fish-eating birds. But these butterfly fish are very hard to spot, as when viewed from above, they almost perfectly blend in with leaf litter. And all these adaptations have helped the African butterfly fish live on this planet for a very long time, as the butterfly fish and its lineage are thought to date back around 100 million years ago, back to a time when the dinosaurs were still walking the earth. So this is one of the few prehistoric fish that you can keep in your homes. But for our next prehistoric fish, we'll be heading down into the deep ocean, as we have the goblin shark. Now the goblin shark is a very rare species of deep sea shark, and is the only living representative of its family. And one of the first things that you may notice about this shark is that it's not a very pretty one. And although it's still debated what its long snout is for, as some believe that like other sharks, this snout is filled with sensory organs to help them find their prey. But others believe that it's used to poke around in narrow crevices to help get prey items out into the open. But another thing that's very prominent on this shark is its jaws. And the goblin shark definitely has some of the weirdest jaws for a shark, as these jaws are attached to elastic ligaments, and when prey comes into striking distance, the jaw protrudes out, allowing the shark to catapult its whole mouth towards the fish. But just like the lamprey, the goblin shark has also
Nightmare
inspired some
fuel.
filmmakers, as the knife head from Pacific Rim was said to be a homage to the goblin shark. And this strange looking shark is also one of the largest fish in the ocean, as they're thought to reach a maximum size of around 6 meters or 20 feet, which makes them one of the largest deep sea predators. And as these sharks can dive to depths of around 1,300 meters, you're very unlikely to see one, as most of the sightings are when fishermen accidentally catch them when they're targeting other species. But this strange shark and its ancestors are thought to date back 125 million years ago to the Cretaceous period, so this truly is a very ugly prehistoric fish. But for our next species, we'll be heading down to the freshwaters of South America, as we have the arapaima. Now the arapaima is probably one of the best known monster fish on the planet today, and as they can reach a size of 3 meters or 9.8 feet, they are among the largest of freshwater fish. And just like many other prehistoric fish still alive today, they have many adaptations that help them survive in a wide range of habitats, as they're another species that is able to breathe atmospheric oxygen, which helps them to survive in the most challenging of conditions. And the arapaima also has thick scales along its body, making it almost impenetrable to other predators. But in the modern day, these scales have led to its downfall, as the arapaima has been overfished for many years, both for its meat and its scales, as these scales have been used to make anything from bags to boots to jackets. And because of their tendency to breathe at the surface of the water, they're very easy to spot for fishermen. And because of their decline in numbers, in 1996, Brazil banned the fishing of this species, and there are still strict bans in place today. And although this species can look very scary at times, they feed almost exclusively on fish and have no interest in humans. But the arapaima can be very dangerous when cornered, as they tend to leap out of the water, and as they have a very bony head, a collision with this fish could almost knock you out, and in the worst of cases, this can prove to be fatal. And although it doesn't date back as far as some of the other species on this list, the arapaima is thought to have existed on this planet for around 23 million years. And this dates back to the Miocene epoch, when the Smilodon and the Toxodon were still walking the planet. So although it's not the longest lived, it is still one of the largest prehistoric fish alive today. But for our next species, we'll head up to North America, as we have the paddlefish. Now, although I talk about a lot of threatened and endangered species on this channel, I rarely talk about fish that have recently gone extinct. And although the paddlefish are classed as a prehistoric fish, the Chinese paddlefish was thought to have gone extinct in around 2019. So today, the American paddlefish is the only living member of its family. But despite being the only living member of its family, they are still closely related to sturgeons, which are prehistoric fish in their own right.
Oh yeah, river monsters. Yeah, that was a cool show.
Fish to go extinct, as unlike the other species, they aren't able to adapt very easily, as a paddlefish is a filter feeder and feeds by swimming through large rivers with its mouth open, filtering out microfoods. And like with many other species, their dramatic decline has been caused by humans, as the constructions of dams have blocked their seasonal upward migration, and the introduction of other filter feeding fish has resulted in some unwanted competition. And just like the closely related sturgeons, their eggs are very highly valued, and if an animal ever produces something of value, it's normally overexploited by humans to the point where they can't bounce back. And this is exactly what's happened with the paddlefish, as they've been criminally overfished and are now a vulnerable species. And although there are many ongoing conservation efforts, this species still falls victim to poaching, as the demand for their caviar remains strong. But although it's struggling today, the paddlefish and their ancestors are thought to have been on this planet for around 125 million years, all the way back to the Cretaceous period. So hopefully more can be done to ensure that this species stays with us for a lot longer. But that's about it for this video. As I said at the start, let me know if you know any other prehistoric fish, and I'll be happy to make a part 3. But thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like these. But until next time, goodbye.
Alright. So that is kind of a little bit of a rundown. So we've talked about the Loch Ness monster. We've talked about some of the evidence, the things we found, and things that have been out there. So I guess you kind of come to the point where, you know, I kind of give my own opinion on it. And well, frankly, my opinion is, as far as the Loch Ness monster goes, I think it's a lot of, you know, things that have been spotted that get misattributed to other things. Now, I mean, it is entirely possible there's some other cryptid species out there that looks like a plesiosaur or something like that that may still be out there in the jungles of the Amazon, in the Congo, or, well, other places. Because, I mean, there are still vast untapped areas, of this world where, they're still, like, as I said earlier in the show, there's still all these different species and things that are being spotted and found and discovered like every single day. So, do I think the Loch Ness Monster is real? No. I put that one at a pretty dubious level. Shandy says total bullshit, guys. But yeah, it was definitely worth a look. I mean, the fact that again, big, awesome shout out to Jungmin Shelley for bringing this news story about this big, a chance to this biggest hunt in 50 years to go take a look for this thing, because there are still people out there that believe in it. I mean, I think it would still be cool. But yeah, a big shout out to Jungmin Shelley for bringing this story to my attention. And you know what? I didn't think I was ever going to get an opportunity to talk about this story, so it just hit at the right time. And it just, it just made for a good show. What, you don't believe in White Kaiser? Well, I am one. Bigfoot is champ. I'm dubious on Bigfoot, but we'll have to actually talk about Bigfoot. I don't really think that it's as much of a thing as possible, but at the same time, there are enough weird sightings that I got to be honest with you. There is a possibility, but I remain more open to the possibility of aliens than Bigfoot. Just saying. Bigfoot. All right. So, oh yeah, of course, aliens, come on. Sean D says it's the one cryptid I'd be the most open to. Oh, are you sure about that?
Phrasing. Hey, phrasing.
Oh, goodness. All right. The only thing I'm certain of is I want to stuff Nessie. Yeah, I think we all do. There we go. All right. Well, anyway, folks. So before we go for the night, I do have one clip left. And it's one that's from one of my favorite movies. It's a total hilarious comedy a little bit. Hopefully, hopefully it's okay, but this one is really, this one's funny. You'll enjoy this. So let me go ahead and grab that there. Yeah, I know. So this is Bullshit or Not from the movie Amazon Women on the Moon. And again, just to make sure that I appease the content, the content gods, I'm going to kind of bump the speed up a layer, just a nudge, keep everything here where it's at.
Extraterrestrials, strange phenomena, missing persons, lost continents, myths, and monsters. We examine these mysteries to determine, are they bullshit or not?
I love this.
London's West End. Here, in the winter of 1888, a series of bizarre and violent murders occurred, which remain unsolved to this very day. Jack the Ripper. Was he a prosperous London surgeon? Perhaps a member of British royalty? Well, our bullshit team has unearthed spectacular new evidence which suggests that Jack the Ripper was, in fact, the Loch Ness Monster. Is it possible that Nessie murdered 5 streetwalkers before returning to Loch Ness? Using undiscovered evidence, we've pieced together the events leading up to the first murder. Although this is a bullshit reenactment, it may have happened just this way.
Hello, dearie. Show you a good.
Okay, obviously got to pause for the little bit there, but I love this little comedy bit. It's so good.
Time for a quid. For the wife and for free. Oh, gents, don't you want a girl to keep you warm tonight? Mum told me there would be nights like this. Oh, my. You are a big one now, aren't you? Come on, darling. Mind you, don't you be stepping on my feet now. Oh, aren't you in a hurry? Now, will you be careful? Not so rough. Wait a minute.
Is this the way it happened? Was Jack the Ripper, in fact, a 60-foot sea serpent from Scotland? Did I take this job for a quick buck? We may never know the answer to these questions. Next week. Hello, I'm Henry Silva. Ever since the ocean liner Titanic sunk on her maiden voyage in 1912, people have asked, how did it happen? Join me as we dramatically recreate the sinking of the great ocean liner, Titanic. Bullshit or not? You be the judge here on this station.
I love that movie so much. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me tonight. Thank you all so much for joining me. And I'm glad that everybody had a good time hanging out. So please, as always, folks, definitely do me a favor. Go on down there and hit that like button. If you're new here or you haven't seen this show before, hit that subscribe button. And Wednesdays, we do this show just to have a little bit of fun, cover some unexplained and weird and interesting topics. And, well, that is always what we love to do. Just to give everybody a quick little update on what we are doing for the rest of this week. So, as always, I'm going to be putting out my daily videos. I probably am not going to be able to have any for tomorrow, considering at what time it is tonight. But also, I do want to make sure I let everybody know that tomorrow night at 9 p.m. So we're going to be doing Real Talk Live. We're going to be watching, well, maybe watching on the stream, but we're going to be covering and doing my review of Ahsoka. Yes, Star Wars Ahsoka, episode 3. And we're going to be talking about it. And oh, dear Lordy, I've already seen some clips. It's going to be a laugh-a-minute ride. So please, everybody, come on out. Tomorrow, again, 9 p.m. Eastern Time is when we're going to be getting started. So, yep, is what I was just mentioning here, Sean. We're going to be streaming tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking Star Wars Ahsoka. Probably going to be getting under the skin of certain people in my audience. Just gonna be honest there. Sorry. I mean, I love Star Wars, but not that crazy about the recent what's been going on with Ahsoka there. It's yeah. Oh, Shanti says such a great show.
Star Destroyers, I'm gonna come.
Oh, goodness. Anyway, folks, last round. Thank you all so much for watching. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Love y'all, and I will see you on the next video. Have a great night, and peace. You ever wonder why we're here? You ever notice that the information that we're being fed doesn't always add up to the truth? Do you ever look out your window at night when the rain's falling down? You ever look down the street and wonder what is going on around you? You ever look out at night and ask yourself, is this all that I am? Where am I? What am I? Is this all there is? Is this real life? As technology continues to bring us closer together, it also tears us further apart. We watch the skies and look at the planet around us and its natural beauty as it continues to march forward on and on and on, unending, unceasing, unwavering. And yet our world, everything that we've built, crumbles around us. We wonder, is this it? Is there more? There's gotta be. We can search. We want to learn. We want to understand. We want to see all that we can see, know all that we can know. We want to look out there. We want to peek behind the veil. We want to ask the questions that nobody will answer. We want to light those fires, the sparks that ignite a curiosity in us. And we ask ourselves, what is out beyond all of that? Beyond the edge of reality?